You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Adler and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 518, our coverage and breakdown of part 1 of the Ahsoka series, a episode that we have been waiting for it feels like at least 2 to 3 years now. They premiered both episodes 1 and 2, or part 1 and part 2, last night, 8 p.m. Central. We made the decision kind of in the last, probably 5-6 hours here that we were going to not do both of the episodes tonight. So in fact, we're only going to cover the first episode, and I guess, the silver lining is we'll be back tomorrow where we're going to break down episode 2. And we're doing that just because we felt like we really needed to give this thing a lot of time. It's pretty dense if you're a hardcore Star Wars fan, believe it or not, and there's just a lot to discuss. A lot of great things happened. And speaking of great things, I am joined by Jonesy, who was always great. Jonesy, thank you for being here. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, sir. How about yourself?
I'm pumped, man. Like I've been Ahsoka like all day, all night. I've watched the episodes a few times now. I got 8 pages of notes that I'm somehow going to try to get through here in at least 3 hours, no more than 3 hours. But yeah, it's life is good, man. I mean, we've got Star Wars on television again, and that makes everybody happy as far as I know.
Yeah, we really do. And this series really is, it's taking all the things we really love about Rebels and some of the other content too, and putting it in a package that's pretty consumable. I think for everybody. I think this is something that can appeal to people who know those series really well, but also don't. And so I think we're off to a really great start with the series.
Yeah, I would agree. So we're not going to dibble-dabble too much around in other stuff. We're going to want to get into the show as soon as possible, but I know we've got some people already in the live chat. If you're with us tonight, thank you for being here. Please chime in with comments, questions. We'll try to get to those as it goes on. But then we've also got some very special people that I know you want to acknowledge.
Yeah, we're now part of the tribe members: Rob, Mike, Lauren, Dante, Riss, Justin Jackson, Sharkman, Dan, Daz, Isabella, Uncle Leon, Josh, Jacob, Steve, Jacob and Rita Reborn, because Steve is now a Delusions of Grandeur member. So Rod, CJ, Alex, and Steve, thank you all for your patronage. We certainly appreciate it. Everyone out in the live stream or in the live chat right now: Music Train, Jeff, Sky, Jack, Alexandra, Skywalker's Academy, Ace Kid from the 90s, Kathy, Risk, Ash. Thank you all for coming out. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And if you guys are, if you're listening to the audio, if you want to join us on YouTube, if you head out to cantinacast.com/YouTube, you can subscribe to the channel, get the alerts, do all the things so that we can get you guys episodes and you guys are made aware of when they pop up. Again, we've got another one coming tomorrow. We've got a bunch of other stuff that we've got planned here that goes on through the weekend as well.
We do. Well, let's get to it, man.
All right. Well, let's do the breakdown. So, all right. We're going to get into a lot of the gory details here. So if you've never joined us or if this is your first time, this can be a little much.
We apologize for nothing.
It can be a little much. We're a long format show, and we get pretty deep into the weeds with a lot of this stuff. So now that we said that, I want to get just kind of your initial thoughts, I guess, on the show, on the series, or I guess the first 2 episodes. Did it meet expectations? What were some of the really quick standout items? And then we'll get into kind of a line-by-line item breakdown here shortly.
Oh, man. Did it meet expectations? I think generally, yeah, I think so. It like I said, it kind of we were curious how they were going to bring everyone up to speed to make sure that people didn't feel lost right away. And they did a really good job. And I think we have to give a shout out over to Atini. Atini kind of called how this was going to start off and working in pre-Rebels epilogue, if you will, and then dropping off after that, after episode 2. So, kudos to Atini. We'll give a shout out there. But I really like this. And I think the characters that really stood out, I mean, Ahsoka was good. I think Sabine was pretty good too. But I got to be honest, it was the characters I expected to stand out really did. And that was Baylan Skoll, Shin Hati, and Morgan Elsbeth. I think the villains of the story, if you will, were just so compelling on the screen every single time that they were there. And I just want more of them every single time they're on the screen. I just want more. They can just linger there, because that seems to be like where the interesting part of the story is. The way that they're going about finding, like with the map and things like that, was an interesting take too. And I think with the map, it doesn't necessarily mean we're not getting a World Between Worlds, though. I think there's still a path there because both groups can go different directions here to be able to do this. But I have a lot of questions about the map and why it would lead them directly to where Thrawn is and what that correlation is. So I'm sure we'll get into a little bit of that tonight. But man, really cool to get Night Sisters confirmed and that there is a survivor still out there and a little bit of ancient history with that on top of it. So, man, so many different things to like. The music was amazing throughout the entire episode. Absolutely fantastic. We'll talk about the end credits because I do want to talk about the end credits, and we'll talk about the font on the opening credits too. With the crawl, I guess we have to call it a crawl. But yeah, we're going to have a half-hour dissection of the font.
That's what I said. I said if Jonesy gets his way, we'll have about 30 minutes dedicated strictly to the font, how it came to be, the historic, references and all of that. But I reined him in, so we're not going to get that far.
Yeah, this is why you want to be over on Discord with us, cantinacast.com/Discord for Patreon members, because, Jeff said his wife's all about that. She's a graphic designer and gets into the fonts. So you're missing all of his really top tier content over on Discord if you're not a member yet.
Riveting content as we talk about font styles and the history of fonts. Really good stuff. So I'm going to try to get to some of the comments. It is like blowing up over here. So I'm going to be throwing stuff up here and there. If I miss your comment, it's nothing personal. It's either I've looked at it too late and it's no longer relevant, or, it's not appropriate. So, okay. So my opening thoughts, I guess, on this, and I posted this in Discord that night after watching both episodes. So I'm going to just kind of touch on a few things. Again, we're going to spend a lot of time breaking this stuff down here in just a little bit, but I mean, overall, I really enjoyed both episodes, and I mean that from the sincerest parts of my heart. I've got some criticisms that I think will work its way out, so I'm not concerned in any way about where this series is going to go, its tone, what it was trying to deliver, meeting expectations. At least for me personally, I think we met expectations. I don't know that it exceeded expectations, but I think the jury, again, is probably out on that once we get further into the series, and certainly by the time we get to the very end, right? So, let's temper some things here. The music, we'll talk about that from the very beginning because it was just stellar. I know we gush about Kevin Kiner on this show a lot, and rightfully so. He's just incredible. And this feels like the first time we're finally getting to see kind of a lot of his own personal work and not just playing off the John Williams stuff, which has not necessarily been a bad thing, but it just feels so kind of independent, and he's standing on his own, but still feels Star Wars centric. It still feels and carries that spirit of Star Wars in its tone and it's the way it's written. And again, more on that here in a little bit, but I'm agreeing with you. Like, that was a big standout item for me. I thought all the characters did pretty well. Like, I had some concerns, of course, with the translation from from animation to live action. I think by and large, they kind of checked the boxes for me. I don't know how I feel about Ahsoka still yet. I'll be honest. Like, there were some moments in there, and I'm attributing all of that to what I've said more recently here. I'm starting to realize it's not necessarily Rosario Dawson. I think it's the character of Ahsoka herself, that level of stoicism that she has, or that level of, I don't know. She seems like she's hurt and she's grieving, and it's coming across, and we're not getting the bright and bubbly Eckstein versions of Ahsoka that we've had, and there's probably a reason, right? An actual narrative reason why that's happening. So again, I'm going to hold off on any severe criticisms, but a little bit later. But I think all of the characters did really well. I mean, Chopper and Hu Yang were perfect, but what would you expect for those two characters? I think Sabine was a standout character. Honestly, I thought Natasha Leo Bordizzo was phenomenal. There were times, especially when she's on that bike and she's talking, there were times it sounded just like it was lifted right out of Rebels, and that's a credit to her. She certainly did her homework. As far as Hera goes, and Morgan Elizabeth Winstead, she did good. I didn't have any really big comments or I guess complaints about it. There were times when it didn't feel like Hera, but then there were times when it did, and so I think this is all going to kind of level out as we get further on into the series.
Did you notice the contacts? Her eyes do look a little more greenish than blue than what we saw in some of it.
Yeah, and I thought maybe that was just me or poor lighting on my stupid phone when I watched it the first time, but I think it confirmed when I watched it on my computer. Maybe they've done something to it. Maybe what we saw originally was just kind of they hadn't really got around to the full coloring of things, but yeah, it's not and to be fair, I know, Jonesy, this is true of you as well. These aren't make or break items for us. We're not sweating over these things, but you know,
Right.
we just kind of like to point it out if it doesn't look the same, because it's worth talking about sometimes. Let's see, where else do I got? We'll talk about more Baylan and Shin in this episode. Just kind of a program note. This weekend on our Patreon show, we're going to get into more in-depth analysis and theory around Baylan and Shin. So, and I know it seems kind of premature, but by then we'll have covered both episodes, and I think we've got enough here to actually kind of start really fleshing out some crazy speculation and theories about who they are, where they're going, what possibly could be in store for them here in the future. So we're going to try to keep it light tonight on the discussion for Shin and Baylan. So I know that's going to be difficult because they are standout characters as well. But I do want to make sure that we've got content safe for the Patreon show. I thought we were going to get an AP5 appearance when they showed
like
that
that
RA7
close,
droid.
yeah.
Oh my goodness. I was like, he's going to talk. That's him. And they were talking about inventory. And I'm thinking, holy crap, the perfect droid. They found a way to work him in. And no, he did not make the show. Yeah. So anyways, I've got other stuff that's kind of trivial at best, but maybe we'll work it into the main episode. But overall, yeah, I think it's a great start. You know, it wasn't like, you know, completely incredible and I've been jumping off the roof, but I really loved it. And I think, and again, still early, but in terms of like the live action Star Wars, this is probably up there with Mando. Like I liked it more than Kenobi. I liked it more than some of the other stuff, even some of the seasons, if not some of the episodes from Mando. I think they did a really good job, and that's a credit to Dave Filoni and his writing. Again, more on that a little bit in just a second. So
it's a very different show, though, than The Mandalorian, right? The vibe and everything else is different. So I think it's sometimes difficult to really equate a one-to-one comparison on some of these, and I think that's okay. I think it's good that these are different tone, different pacing, you know, just different overall. Just the ambiance of the show is going to be very different. I think that's exciting. I think that's a good thing because that means you can go, like how you feel, you can go watch that content, which is really kind of how I like to do Star Wars. Like some things are just better some days than others, right? So it's good that we've got this in the live action series as well.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's see. So I said we start with Kevin Kiner, and I've already said a couple of things on here. Is there anything you want to add? I've got a couple of things, but I mean, overall, I think we're going to agree that this music is pretty dang phenomenal.
I mean, like you said, from the first note, it just felt different. It felt unique, and I absolutely loved it. I think it just fits so well with not only kind of like a Togrutan culture a little bit, but just give the show a unique feel compared to everything else we have. And I think that's something, again, that helps bring something really special to this show. Mandalorian had it with, you know, with their instruments as well, but this one with the drums and with, man, just some of the percussion and the things that they're doing. It really, really exciting. A lot of different music. And like you said before, Kevin Kiner is really, like, there weren't any, like, there were very, very slight variations, actually pretty heavy variations of the Force theme and things like that were in the music, but you had to really be listening to it in order to find them. And so it is not what he was doing in Rebels or even in Clone Wars, where he was really leaning heavy into the John Williams music and then finding his voice a little bit later on, or finding those variables later on. It's like, no, this is just all original stuff, which is, I think, both good. I also miss some of those things. I think some of those themes would be great to have be revisited and bring back in with a very different flair to them, especially with this new vibe that we're getting on the kind of the tonality of the sounds and the music. I think that would be fun to go back and revisit with Kiner and see what he wants to do with it when he brings like the big fanfare up and things like that. I think it would be really cool to see that, but absolutely stellar. I mean, from start to finish, my only complaint is the very end credit music, actually, of all the things.
All right, Jonesy, thanks for being here. We'll see you next week. I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding, sir. What do you mean? You don't like it?
It's not that I don't like it. It is very good, but I am so burned out on the intros or the outro, or usually more intros of like the whole Game of Thrones thing, like the whole.
Oh, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, with the visuals of, you know, all of that up close, and, you know, the lines we're going on these paths, and then you have the music. It just felt Game of Thrones and Star Wars. It looked great and it sounded great. I just don't want that. It's just me. I just don't want it. It had no real complaints with it overall, but I'm like, man, it just doesn't feel like it fits very well for the show. You know, with the Game of Thrones type of vibe. But maybe that's just me. Maybe it's just where my brain went, and not everybody. I know a lot of people are actually loving it, so it's cool to have a more modern, you know, take on an intro for Star Wars. I get that part, but I just don't know how well it fits.
Well, let's talk more about that here at the very end, because I mean, we actually have it in the notes to talk about. But, you know, it was a little different. We didn't get the, you know, behind the scenes or the concept art, right? So they didn't go that route. I think they went a different route. They threw those kind of credits at the end versus at the beginning.
Actually, I like that idea, though. I don't want the credits at the beginning anyway. I hate waiting for the show to start.
Yeah, and then I think the other thing that was maybe different, and again, put on your tinfoil hats, but if you watch those credits closely, it almost feels like, oh, wait, hold on. Jonesy's, okay, yep, he's got his hat. It is on. So it almost feels like they're kind of signaling what the story is going to do at a very high level. And I'll get to that here in a little bit. When you pay close attention to what's happening in the background and kind of where the lines are being drawn and stuff, they're almost, kind of telegraphing what we can expect maybe narratively in this series. So, I will, again, more on that a little bit later. Just quickly, I know we're still going on about the music, but I'm sorry, it was too freaking good. Right. The crawl, from the very beginning, that for me, as a huge fan of Kurosawa films, is like lifted right off any one of his movies. The way it just starts with the drums and there's blackness, and then we get the the fanfare stuff that comes in. But just it did sound very. I like that you said it was very Toruta. I didn't really even put that together. But if you think back to the Ahsoka episode or from Tales of the Jedi, we got similar tones in there as well. So that it sounds like he's kind of carried that on. But it definitely had a very samurai kind of feel to it. Everything about her costume screamed samurai. Everything about the settings, the stuff that we saw in The Mandalorian screamed that. Even her shoes, if you looked at her shoes that she's wearing in this series, very Asian-inspired, ancient Eastern culture-inspired type shoes. I forget what they're called. But we'll get into the Kurosawa stuff a little bit later because there's other things that Filoni's doing here behind the lens that are very similar. But there was voices, like actual vocals in some of these. I don't remember if it was episode 1 or part 2, if not both. There was vocals that he was using. We had the rock music, which Jeff chimed in about. And he said the music was phenomenal throughout, but I really liked the metal song they threw in there for the Sabine scene. Very Chaddick. I don't know who that is, and I feel ashamed that I don't. But I'm sure he's 100% right. But we had that, and then later on, we had piano at one point when Balin is kind of walking through and he's doing his Darth Vader impression, killing everybody. But it was just a wide variety, a big spectrum of different music. And what I said that night after watching, and as I was typing in my kind of initial comments, was that the music lingers with you. Like you hear it and it just doesn't go away. And I don't mean that in a bad way at all. That's not criticism. I think it's a positive thing that you hear things. And there's a couple of moments too where I think he did play on some John Williams stuff, but he gives it a bit of a different riff, kind of sets it off a little bit different. And you kind of hear it and you expect it to go one way and he changes it up on you, but it's in a good way. It's a positive thing. So again, I don't know, man. I think he's done a great job, and I know it's probably early, but I just feel like this is probably going to be his best work to date, and that's a tall order considering he did the Clone Wars and of course Rebels. So, all right, let's talk about the crawl. This is where the 30-minute font discussion is going to come from. Hold on. Before we get in the crawl, we didn't talk about the fanfare thing. That was all red. They were obviously playing with the theme here. We've seen them change the titles or the color of titles all the time in Clone Wars, Rebels, even in the movies. Sometimes it means something. Most of the time it doesn't. You could probably chalk up the use of red as, I don't know, evil. It's not necessarily Sith, though. So
no, it's more of a darker. Again, the whole tone of the show is just a little bit darker. A looming presence is coming. A looming darkness is coming.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so don't read too much into it. It's fun that they do it. I love that they change it up. But the crawl itself, so I don't hate it. I didn't hate it at all. It did feel weird only because it was flat going up. They didn't do the depth, the 3D depth or isometric view, fading away. It wasn't the traditional yellow, and I don't need that. That does feel like it's been reserved for
and it wasn't justified.
Main movies.
Everybody forgets it wasn't justified.
Yeah, they didn't set the alignment, and I joked that they had done this with the iMovie app on a MacBook because I'm pretty sure I could replicate that. And I think you pointed out, well, maybe they were using the font from a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Were you able to confirm? Did they actually use that or some version of it?
Yeah, it's basically the same. So what's used a long time ago, far, far away, and the actual crawl is a play off of either Franklin Gothic, News Gothic, or Trade Bowl Gothic #2. One of those three, they're all kind of family and they different histories of which one have come around. The difference is in the Star Wars text that we're used to seeing is bolded. In this one, it was not bolded. Actually, it was narrower and it was a little bit taller too. but it is the exact same font. It's just the way that it appears on the screen, not being any kind of perspective or anything like that, just looks very different. And that not being bolded really does make it look a little different. I think some of the spacing, they call it tracking, so how close the letters are together.
Yeah.
The tracking looked like it was a little bit different as well, but that's super subjective too. That's changed over time in the years, so that's really difficult to try to qualify in that way. But it is the same font though. It's like that in different bold. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So all that aside, like again, this is not a break or make or break item for us, right? It's just worthy of discussing because traditionally we've we've either had like the yellow or scrolling text from top to bottom or up, bottom to top, or what we did with Rogue One. Or nothing at all, right? In some of these episodes from like the animated series.
But kudos to them for for doing a crawl and it being so well written and very applicable. I think this is where it was really important to have it because it helped bring you up to speed. And this is the power of the crawl. This is where the crawl can really do so many good things for your show without having to spend more than just a couple of minutes letting it go by. And you get everybody up to speed about where you're at. You've introduced characters. You understand their motives already. And then you can jump into the show and start showing the people you want to show. And you didn't have to dwell on all the other stuff and work it into the next hour.
Yeah, right. And I agree. Yeah, there's definitely some benefits from that. And make no mistake about it. I mean, it had the same format. We had 3 paragraphs. Even the ellipsis that they threw at the very end had 4 dots instead of 3.
Right.
Everybody probably knows the history and the gaffe that happened with that. But it became Star Wars tradition. And so it was honored, I guess, is whether you liked it or not. It was purposeful, and they were honoring what had come before. So on that, I'll give them kudos. Look, all right, I do want to talk about the crawl because there are some things in here that are interesting that I felt like stood out as part of why Filoni chose the wording that he chose, or what he chose to say in the crawl. But he says the evil galactic empire in evil galactic. It's interesting that he chose to put that in all bold or all caps. Has fallen, and a new republic.
It's what they did in the original trilogy with the Galactic Empire, right?
Right. Evil Galactic Empire has fallen with a new republic, all caps, has risen to take its place. However, sinister agents, that feels very Star Wars. I read that and I was like, oh yeah, look, he's learned, are already at work to undermine the fragile peace. A plot is underway to find the Imperial Grand Admiral Thrawn, again, all caps, and bring him out of exile. That was an interesting choice of words that he was in exile, because exile usually means like you've been, well, I guess Ezra sent him out into exile. But
I think Morgan Elsbeth used the words banished later on, too.
She is banished later on, yeah. So it's an interesting take. I don't know if they're going to dig into that later and kind of, contextualize a little bit more why they kind of feel that way or look at it that way. But
knowing what we know about Thrawn, it is an interesting choice of using the word exile specifically.
Well, yeah, given that, and go to the Thrawn breakdown episode that we did here recently where we talked about his exile, again, heir to the Empire. Once presumed dead, rumors are spreading of Thrawn's return, which would galvanize the Imperial remnants and start another war. And we talked about this too, because this is very similar to where the rebels were prior to, the overthrowing the Galactic Empire, or, maybe where the Mandalorians are headed, where they are, kind of scattered, and it's going to take somebody like Bo-Katan or, Mando to kind of galvanize them and bring them back. So it's just funny, the ebb and flow of these great empires and these big forces of power within the galactic or within the galaxy just kind of come and go, but they all end up reforming here later down the road.
I love that they use Imperial Remnant though.
Yeah, for sure. I think I want to say they said that in Mando as well, but okay. And the last paragraph says former Jedi Knight Ahsoka Tano captured one of Thrawn's allies and learned of a secret map, which is vital to the enemy's plan. Ahsoka now searches for the map as her prisoner, Morgan Elsbeth, is transported to the New Republic for trial. So, I guess on that last part, Ahsoka Tano, it's interesting that she captured Morgan Elsbeth, didn't escort her herself. This is maybe plot convenience, right? So that way they can break her out. I don't know. It just feels like if somebody's that important, you don't do that. But maybe she already had the information that she needed, and so therefore it was like, not really high security at that point. We get the call out of the map itself, which becomes the MacGuffin here that we're going to talk about in just a few. And there was one other thing. So that, and we'll get into this too, probably more in the second episode, but they're already alluding to, and this was discussed in the Mando season when we first meet Morgan Elsbeth, but somehow she has contact with Thrawn, or at least has a sense that he's out there somewhere. And I think it's to be determined on where that is, but I think they are going to dig into that in greater detail as the series goes on, because it is kind of important. It's a big unanswered question that I think a lot of us had during that season 5 of Mando, that episode of Mando in season 3. And especially after the second episode, it's like, what is she hearing? How are these rumors starting to spin? And is it Morgan that's doing it, or are others aware of this, right? Or is it just the rumblings within the Empire? So I'll pause there. Do you want to add anything before we get into the actual breakdown here?
No, I think he's summarized it pretty well. Let's get into it.
All right, so let's talk where we first open up, which is Sector G38. Who knows where that is? And we get, was it Captain Hale? What was his name? I didn't catch.
Hale. Yeah, Captain Hale.
Okay. Right. Captain Hale, which was Mark Rolston. So welcome to Star Wars world, Mark Rolston, who was, I only know him the Alien series.
Right.
And then we had Hicks last in Mando season 3. So I don't know if we're just bringing everybody from the Aliens movies over into Star Wars. But I saw some folks that were kind of upset with him, maybe that he was a little too arrogant, a little too cocky. But I kind of felt that's probably in line with what I would expect maybe somebody like him to be, given where the New Republic is.
Yeah, I mean, you don't expect Jedi, right? And when someone claims to be a Jedi and you're coming on your ship, you're like, okay, that's bogus, right? Now, why they invited that on the craft rather than tractor beam and boarding the ship and everything else, yeah, I think that's fair criticism. He's an idiot. I mean, that's pretty clear. There was some arrogance there with some of that, but I don't know. It was still interesting. I thought it was really good. I liked the attitude that he does have, though. And I've been a little critical of like we're over dumbing down the New Republic in some ways, but I think they're also like, who could possibly, with a small ship like this, how much damage could they possibly do? And there's no way and if they are Jedi, then cool, they're on our side, right?
Right.
And I think this is where we had speculated, like, how do they actually get on the ship? When we'd seen this in some of the teasers and the trailers of, maybe they're masking as Jedi or coming in on the ship as a consular or something like that. And, sure enough is what it was. And it was enough of a distraction that it didn't, while it raised flags, it wasn't enough for them to turn them away or to open fire or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. That use of the old Jedi clearance code was pretty bold, I think. But at the same time, what were they? I mean, they probably knew they were going to be able to just kind of walk right in there and pull her out. I mean, they weren't going to get much resistance, honestly, from the New Republic, and we saw that very clearly here in just a second. Their entrance was pretty epic. Ray Stevenson, rest in peace, man. That's just a huge loss. Like I watched that and I think, wow, he's doing such an amazing job, and then you snap to reality and it's like, crap, he's gone. It just sucks. He's so good. And I mean, time will only tell where this series goes with his character, and hopefully it's not one where they left it off to bring him back into a season 2 or some other thing. But he's such a great talent, as Shin as well, which we'll get into here a little bit. But their presence coming in, their entrance was pretty epic.
Absolutely. And Shin Hati, I mean, like badass example number 1, she just goes and wrecks shop. So
yeah,
she was like instant favorite already. I was like, man, this character's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
She's gonna get all the cool fighting scenes, it sounds like.
Yeah,
and that she has not disappointed to date. And
it was there that whole line about you're no Jedi, and then him saying you're right, we are no Jedi kind of thing. I mean, all that plays again on Ahsoka's, I am no Jedi comments, or, that she made during the Rebels series. And like you said, that whole battle with him was great. I mean, we already kind of broke that down. I think we saw pretty much all of it in the trailer, to be honest, at least that first initial part of it. Right. And even a lot of the stuff that we saw in the hallway was kind of in the trailer. It was in the trailers. So I don't know. And that's fine. No, I mean, there was still some extra stuff in there. What I was laughing at was, number one, they had Amon Calamari as one of the security guards, and he was up at the very front. Right. First of all, they cut the dude's helmet off. Did you see that, where they had to like cut the sides off because the guy's eyes were bulging off to the left and right? Right. But then he has a blaster, and if you look at his hands,
how is he going to hold it? It's like flat against his holster, right?
They sent that poor chump out to his death. There was no way he was going to be able. And look at his blaster; it's like a normal blaster. He has no way to get his finger into the trigger. So he was doomed from the beginning, but and of course he dies. He's the first one that Shin kills, but
Right.
but yeah, I thought it was great. Like, and let's talk about Shin Hati real quick. And I'm going to credit Ash because I told her I would do this, but she made a really good comment that I hadn't really picked up on. She doesn't say a lot in at least the first 2 episodes, and I forget the actor, Ivana Sanko.
Sakno, yeah.
Sakno. She does an amazing job with her eyes. Like, and what Ash said was she says so much with just the way she looks, her expressions. And it's true. You watch what she's doing as the other actors and the way she plays off that with her physicality. She does a really good job. And I've got a lot of thoughts and theories about her character. Again, we'll talk about that on the Patreon show this weekend. And we'll talk a little bit about that when we get into tomorrow's episode, breaking down the second part 2 of Ahsoka. But yeah, I thought Ray Stevenson was fantastic. He's such a presence. I mean, that guy's a massive dude to begin with. I was 6'3" or whatever he is. I thought he did a really good job of coming across as somebody who's not a Jedi, but he was almost reserved. Like, there was nothing that he was relishing in the way he was going about and killing people, which I thought was good. Like, there has to be that balance. And so it brings up a whole lot of theories as to, again, to who he was or what he is and what he really is trying to do. But true to their word, and what we talked about as well, is that they was confirmed, at least in this episode and in the second one, is that they were hired. They're being paid.
Right.
So I think that rules out any true allegiance to a Thrawn or a Morgan Elsbeth. It's really about the money, but then you get the sense that there probably is an ulterior motive there for them, something that they're going after that we're just not really sure of yet. And again, we will speculate that on Sunday. But, hey, one other thing. Did you notice that when Morgan Elsbeth came out of the chamber, he reached over, very gentlemanlike, took her hand and walked her out?
Yeah, Lady Morgan.
Well, that is
He's
not
a gentleman.
Sith. He's a gentleman.
That's right.
And so, we talked about this, and I want to get your thoughts, because I know you said, we're getting too many of they're not really bad, but they're not really good characters. And I don't know, there's certain things that they're doing with this character. Maybe it's just the way Stevenson is portraying him. I'm starting to dig it, man. I really think could be a new take. I'm almost with you. Like, it feels like it's been overdone a lot in Star Wars, but there's just something about him that's super appealing already.
Yeah, the way they're doing it here, I don't have a problem with. I like that there's a certain regalness to him and a certain older, appreciation, right? An older gentleman type of aspect to it. And I think we see this more in the second episode too, of what is their true motive. And I think that's the part that we need to hear and need to understand a little bit better before we jump to any real conclusions about what it is they expect to get out of this arrangement. Because I think there's clearly something more there when they talk about power. But again, we'll focus more on that tomorrow when we do the second episode.
Yeah. Let's see. And then that, after that's over with, we cut to the main title and the main theme of Ahsoka. So, I mean, not much to say there. I thought it was great. It was nicely done. And then we move over to these ruins. Did you catch the name on this? I forget what she called them. I think it was in episode 2 or part 2 that they mentioned it, but I forget what the ruins were. But
did we just skip? We kind of skipped the whole fight scene. A lot of people have equated the fight, like the hallway scene, to Vader for Baylan Skoll. Am I the only one that thinks more of the Luke Skywalker scene in Mando season 2?
Well, that's so I'm with you. That's kind of what I meant. It was a different approach. I mean, the end result was the same. A lot of people died and he was force choking, but it was more reserved. It wasn't like he was,
just a job. Yeah.
It was just a job, and somebody like Palpatine or maybe Vader, as a true Sith, they relish in that emotion and the fear. And I never got the sense that he was, being powered by that in any way. Again, not a Jedi because, of course, of the actions, but there was just something about, like I said, it was a job. He was just doing what he was paid to do, and it was nothing personal to any of those folks.
Yeah, I just like the music with it too, the piano. And again, it was not the same as Luke Skywalker's when he was, coming on board to save Grogu and company, but it just felt more reminiscent of that than it did of Vader in the hallway, even though I get the direct correlation of it with the New Republic ship versus a, Rebellion era ship or Empire era ship. But anyway, it just felt more like the Luke scene than anything else. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. And sorry, I didn't mean to skip over. I figured we kind of talked a lot about it when we talked about the trailer breakdown, but is there anything else you want to add, I guess?
No, it was kind of the couple of that with the music, because it's the first time we've actually had the music to go with it. In the trailer, we had the trailer music over top of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that darker, brooding piano music was an interesting take. nothing that we've ever seen associated with a Jedi or even a Sith coming through and just, leveling people left and right. And Shin Hati's like moves too. We'll talk more probably in this episode at the very end, but just her fighting stances are very interesting. Like nothing that we've seen before, maybe in Clone Wars, but not in the movies. So, okay, so we get to the ruins, which I guess we know now are kind of these Night Sister ruins of some sort. It's an old ancient temple, and and this is where I felt like this was Filoni doing his best Akira Kurosawa, because, and I think I talked about this in an episode, there are certain elements cinematically that Kurosawa does in all of his movies, and you can count all the things, and some of the more common ones are you have a camera that is moving. You have a single character, you can see the big environments, and then you have some type of element, natural element occurring in the frame. And that first shot is exactly that. It's Ahsoka, she's walking, it's a massive background. The focus is on her. We've got the music, you can see the wind kicking up, and and he holds on that. And this is what I'm talking about. Like, there were times when I felt like, especially in this episode with Filoni behind the lens or behind the camera, I just felt like he was almost lingering a little too much, a little too long on some things. And so we can maybe say that's I said this was probably the only slight I really had, but it did feel a little bit sluggish. And because it felt like it just wasn't getting pulled off. I can totally see what he was trying to do. I see where he was going. I appreciate the moments he was trying to give us and allow us to just kind of soak in, no pun intended, soak in what we were seeing. But there was, I don't know, again, it just felt a little sluggish. There were some editing things, and this is the same criticism that I had with some of the episodes that he directed in The Mandalorian. I felt like I was hoping that this would get better in the series, and I would say I don't think it got worse, so no damage done, but it was just felt like it was,
Did it feel better in subsequent viewings, though? Did it feel like did you notice it as much every time you watched it again? Because I had a lot of those same reactions the first time and a little bit of the second one, but then as I got through additional viewings, it was less and less obvious to me. And to me, I was like, okay, what's the alternative to this? Do I want them to be too long or too short? I'd rather them be just a little too long. But I agree with you. I think it was just a hair longer in a number of scenes. It wasn't just one or two. It was actually quite a few.
Yeah.
And some of it maybe was to accentuate the awkwardness too between Ahsoka and Sabine a lot of times, right? There were a lot of those scenes that just lingered and there was no dialogue. It was just looking around and characters kind of started looking around. And I mean, it was intentional, I think, in that regard. But there were some other ones, though. I'm like, okay, we can move this along just a little bit more if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess to answer your question, I mean, I guess there were diminishing returns in terms of like how much it bothered me. I would agree.
Right.
And I don't even really think about it now. I guess for the sake of the discussion and the breakdown, it's worth mentioning. But I don't know. We'll see. It's one episode, and I think he's directing a total of 2, I think, or 3. I forget now. I
think it's just 2. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see if that turns up. Again, I'll give him credit for the writing, though. I think we kind of probably skipped over that, but
the writing was really good.
Writing was great. Like, and I'm not even talking about the dialogue, because I think some of the dialogue was kind of here and there, but then that's fine. I don't really pay a whole lot. There's not a lot of stock for me when it comes to the dialogue sometimes in Star Wars, because let's just be honest, George Lucas was not always the best at dialogue, but what I felt like similar to Lucas was, I mean, there's so much here. He gave us so many things to discuss. And on the surface, if you're somebody who has not been following Star Wars very closely, has not been following Rebels very closely, or even the Clone Wars very closely, or Resistance, no, I'm kidding. But if you haven't been following those shows, you may be missing out. But I think for those of us that have, there's a lot here to discuss. There's a lot of things to pick up, Easter eggs, or just really callbacks to certain things that just make your mind wander, and very, very intriguing stuff. We're getting new Star Wars in a way that we've not traditionally got until, since Lucas was still at the helm. So all good things there. Okay, so we get the Ahsoka showing off, cutting the circle into the thing. She did this in the Clone Wars and in season 7 of Clone Wars with Rex. So we'd already seen her kind of do that move, which was cool, but good to see that she's still continuing on with that. And then we get down into this map room, which is similar. It reminded me a lot of like the map room from Raiders of the Lost Ark, to be honest.
There were a lot of Raiders references in this episode.
Yeah.
Thought we were watching Bad Batch again.
Yeah, there was a couple episodes that were just like, blatantly takes on Raiders or the Indiana Jones movies. But I did enjoy it. And this is, again, another episode where I felt like, okay, it's taking a little long. I got it. She's turning the dials. Okay, cool. But he kept going back, really wanting us to focus on it. Again, cool to see Ahsoka that up close and personal and how she was trying to figure these things out, either using the Force or just using her intuition.
She was listening, which is what Kanan was teaching Ezra to do, right? And with Mortis as well. You have to stop and listen, right? And so that's what I equated it to, is kind of a call back to that.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll watch, now that you've said that, maybe I'll go back and watch that scene and listen for the audio, because I know there are some things that are happening audibly, but I didn't put a lot of focus.
There's some, and the subtitles didn't really say much about it, but you can definitely see her close her eyes and kind of focus, and there is stuff going on. So
yeah,
it's probably super subtle and probably overkill, but knowing Filoni, it may have been an idea in his head of like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Maybe she's drawing on some of that as well.
Okay, and you're not going to enjoy this, but I'm going to go to the comments here. Jonesy cosplaying Balin with the hair pulled back. I
actually,
hadn't considered that.
I just like that she spells Balin correctly, because so many people spell Balin wrong.
I had it wrong. I think I've got it wrong in all the show notes.
I correct it every single time in the show notes.
Really, thank you. It's Balan and not Balon.
Right.
So there's that one. Holy bananas, Miss Sunflower is back. She says, also felt like Fallen Order and Survivor. That's a good point. That whole scene in there where she's kind of doing puzzle stuff, and even the Rubik's Cube or Rubik's Sphere that we had a little bit later certainly brought me shades of that stuff as well.
Oh, shades of Hellraiser too, but yeah, whatever.
Well, wouldn't go Hellraiser. Let's see. So yeah. So and just to kind of talk about, when we were speculating in the trailer, the lady figure images on the walls. I said it kind of looked like Ahsoka with the hood and all that. Never dawned on me to think that was the Night Sisters, and now it's like, oh yeah, that looks more like Mother Talzin than it does Ahsoka Tano. But yeah, whatever. I don't get everything right here. So yeah, they made a pretty good effort there to kind of hit that a little hard, that this was a Night Sister temple, of ancient temple of some sort. And then we get, of course, the map and whatever the carbon stuff was that she was breaking apart and pulled it out. It seemed a little really complex, but hey, I'm with it. It's fine. It's part of the story. Okay, pops out, and we get the first, I guess, Ahsoka battle, where she's fighting these HK droids. These are the droids that we'd seen already in the Mando. Different take on some of the at least aesthetically, they're a little bit different than what we've seen historically. No pun intended there, but historically in the Old Republic. But these are the HK droids of canon, at least this current time. So I don't know. Any thoughts on her first fight? And then I want to maybe, if you could chime in on, I guess, on the choreography and the physicality that Rosario Dawson brought to the character in these fights.
Yeah, when she first started the fight, I was like, man, it's a little bit slow, but she picked it up, right? I mean, I think the actions are all there. I love the little held tip when she crosses the sabers to catch the lead droid's pole arm or whatever it is, the pike, and she like tilts her head to the side. I just laugh every single time I see it, because it's like, really? Like, I don't know what she's thinking when she does that, but I just absolutely love it. I thought it was really cool. But I think the moves were all there. I love the creativity of getting rid of a few of them so she could narrow down her opponents, and using the same, kind of dropping off the back. It was very kind of Luke Skywalker in Return of the Jedi a little bit, the Empire Strikes Back, if you will. And
yeah,
so it was really cool to see some of that. And I think the physicality, I think she's bringing it to the role. I think the first motion was a little slow, but after that, everything really picked up and was really quick. And I think we see a little bit more of that in episode 2 as well, with her fighting style and what she's able to bring to the character. And again, it looks kind of flawless,
Yeah, I would agree. I don't. It's been hard too. Like there were some pretty big shoes, or a very high bar that was set when we first got our live action Jedi fight. And I'm not talking about A New Hope, of course, and I'm not talking about Return of the Jedi, but I'm talking about like Jedi in their prime as it was meant to be, and of
prequel stuff.
Yeah, prequel stuff, right? And so that bar was set pretty high. Well, the Mace Windu and Palpatine Sidious fight, well, that was kind of crap, but
glad those guys are dead.
that fight took forever, according to the way it was filmed. But no, seriously, like it was a high bar that was set, of course, by Ray Park and Ewan McGregor, and then later on with Hayden and Ewan. Just we've all seen the BTS stuff and how much they put into that fighting. You can see the vigor, you can see the energy. The choreography is like super crisp, and they threw in CGI to make it even more crazy and unrealistic. But that bar has been pretty high, and there haven't been a lot of people that have been able to kind of rise to that, and that's not a criticism. That's just the reality of all. So I've seen some folks that have been critical about, I guess, her fighting style in this scene, and then a little bit later, I think when we got to when she's fighting the droids again in part 2.
Right.
But I wouldn't go so far to say that it was bad. It's just, I think it was great. It's never going to be animation. Let's just be clear about it, right? So if you're comparing it to Rebels, get out of here. You're in the wrong. Go find a different fandom.
You just can't do it. Yeah,
you can't do it, right? But when you compare it to other live action, I think it's fair criticism. But did it detract? No, not at all. Like I'm with you. Like at first, you're trying to get your bearings on where everybody is and what she's doing, but then once it starts moving, it does really good. And I think this fight was pretty good, but I would say the one in part 2 was even better, and I really enjoyed that one a lot more. So not to foreshadow that one, but and it really wasn't much of a fight. I mean, let's be honest. She dispatched these droids like within a matter of a few seconds. Of course, they had the self-destruct things, which that seemed excessive. Like I'm all for thermal
I'm struggling
detonators.
to understand. I'm struggling to understand the reasoning behind we lost self-destruct. Let's nuke everything.
I mean IG-11 did it.
Did they think that the device would survive or something, or they're just dumb? I
don't know.
Whoever programmed that droid needs to go reevaluate something.
It's the same one that programmed IG-11, right? He was always, it's time to self-destruct. No self-destruct, no self-destruct. But yeah, I just meant like, I get, okay, fine. Their programming is such that if they lose, they blow themselves up. But the explosion looked like it was like, I don't know, like there had to be something else.
Like Armageddon, man.
In the air, or that temple was laced with gunpowder somewhere. I don't know. It was excessive. I mean, it made for a great action shot, and it was very climactic. But wow, I mean, where the heck are they? What were they carrying? Those were massive bombs.
Man, that was like a nuke. Yeah, they were just had a nuke strapped to their check. Well, and there was some speculation I'd read online that maybe
Miss Sunflower said Oppenheimer. Sorry, that tickles me. Sorry, go ahead.
Right. I mean, and there were some people saying maybe the stuff that was on the temple grounds or whatever was something that could have ignited or whatever, and that would have been what caught fire and completely obliterated everything. That seems still pretty tough to get my arms around, but we can go with something like that too.
Yeah, I would agree. That seems like a stretch to kind of get there. I want to highlight Clayton. Clayton, thanks for joining us. I don't know if you've ever been here. If you have, it's the first time I think I've ever seen your comments, but it says it's always great to see some Night Sister action. And on that note, I think we're gonna get a lot more of it, honestly. Like I feel like, I mean, I don't think we'll get to the level of Clone Wars and some of the episodes that were really deep into the mythology of the Night Sisters, but we're gonna get our fair share, especially now that the cat's out of the bag, or the loaf cat's out of the bag, with Morgan Elsbeth being a Night Sister and finally being confirmed as such. So pretty excited myself to dig into that some more. Okay, so then we get over to we got our first appearance of Hu Yang, which I thought, David Tennant reprising his role there. I mean, he was just great, beginning to end. Everything he said, so in character. I love the digs that he was doing, here and there with Ahsoka. He's almost kind of like that moral barometer, or kind of like the dad. I mean, he's been around for 500 years plus training Jedi, so he knows a few things about right and wrong, and the expectations of a Jedi, or the expectations of just being a good person. And I love that he's kind of throwing that in Ahsoka's face from time to time. Maybe we'll touch on that here a little bit, but I guess your thoughts on him coming back.
I loved it. I mean, I love the way that he phrases everything. It's like, it's very dry, but at the same time, there's almost a sarcasm to it a lot of times as well, that he just trails off and just lets her think about it. But then he's also still a droid, so he's still got that really regimented way of viewing everything, but also and a little bit of self-centeredness to go with it as well. Yeah. Actually, one thing I wanted to ask you though is, in this scene where they sit in the cockpit and she turns around to him after the awkward moment and she pulls it down, she goes, "I found it." I swear I wanted her to say Marcus, like from Indiana Jones. I had it, Marcus.
I had it in my hand. Yep. I get where you're going.
It felt exactly like another indie reference to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. The line that stood out there, I mean, they talk about the Jedi protocol, which is interesting that that Filoni did that, because it's a callback. We get a callback to this line here in a little bit, or just almost immediately, when she's talking about how she got the information out of Morgan Elsbeth, which seems shady. But hold that thought. Yeah. What I want to say was his sick burn that he said, "This is the job of a Padawan learner, which I am not," and then looks over at her like, "You used to have one, you don't anymore." So again, kind of throwing that in her face of like,
Right.
I think there's some, responsibility that she should be taking, or maybe she feels like she's not taking for what happened between her and Sabine. And I think that'll, get fleshed out and toned out here later.
Yeah, and Hu Yang definitely seems to support Sabine's apprenticeship, I think, overall. And for whatever reason, I don't know. I think it might be as much for Ahsoka as anybody else, but I think he sees that they kind of need each other. And we get a little bit more of it in episode 2, of course, but it's interesting that he's the one to try to help pull them together along with Hera in some ways.
Right. And he probably sees that maybe he's able to see that they were probably good for each other and didn't allow it to kind of nurture, or felt like, Ahsoka ran off too early. She abandoned when, had this been at the time of the Jedi Order, she wouldn't have had that option. She would have had it stuck with it, similar to with what, Kenobi did. Like, how many times did he want to bail and was like, I can't be this kid's teacher. I'm not a good teacher. He wanted to leave, and everybody kept saying, no, you got to do it. Similar situation there. And I think Hu Yang seen through that and kind of see that they had something good there at one point. I love the callback to Fulcrum, right? Staying, they acknowledge that they were Fulcrum carryover from the Ahsoka series. She mentions, so I want to go back to what I said. So she mentions that she was able to get he asked, how did you get this out of Morgan Elsbeth? Which was what I was thinking too, when they alluded to the fact that she got that information. I'm like, how would she ever give that up? Willingly give that up? Because I don't see Ahsoka Tano using torture, right? Pain. That seems a little bit too dark. But did she do kind of a Kylo Ren mind probe kind of thing? Maybe that's the thing that she did. I mean, it seems to be the most obvious, but
that's torture, though, right?
Maybe it's from a certain point of view, Jonesy. It is torture. But I think if you're going like
most people that experience that end up screaming. So I'm going to go with my point of view is probably accurate.
Like, she didn't turn her into a vegetable, at least that we know of. Yeah. I don't know. I no. So in all seriousness, I got to think she did hurt her, right? But was it like a physical bleeding kind of torture, or a Imperial torture droid type device? I don't think it was that. And maybe she justifies it, like kind of like I'm trying to rationalize it, trying to be apologetic for what she might have done. That may have gone through her head too. Like, well, I'm not doing those sort of things, and this is just temporary. I'm just going into her mind. I'm getting the information. It's for the greater good of the galaxy, right? Take a note from Thrawn's pages. I don't know.
My question is, how did she do it to a Night Sister though? So someone who can wield magic in some kind of way, it seems like she would have had to break through some of those defenses. So how would she actually have accomplished it, or was it just sheer will? And this is where I think it probably borderlined a little bit on torture. And it's probably better we don't explore this in the character, right? At least on screen, right? Of what did she actually do to bend those rules? But that might also be why some of the reasons why she checked out on saving or on and continuing to train Sabine, although this has been years removed, I think. But she recognized parts of herself that she'd already lost, and that she had already started to chip away at, maybe morals, how she appeals to the Jedi Code. Maybe this is why she's been resistant to join up with Luke in some kind of ways, because she knows she's made a few decisions along the way that are a bit anti-Jedi like, unlike the Jedi that she's supposed to be or was raised to be in some ways. And so I think maybe some of those have all contributed to that breaking point. But I think also it could also go back to her obsession with finding Thrawn, especially after learning that he's around. He could have survived. It's really important for her to go get it. And she feels like any means necessary starts to come out. And again, this is the Anakin side of things. And what does that influence look like on her as well? And then does that pendulum swing really hard the other way with guilt and shame, knowing what became of Anakin in the same way by making those concessions over time?
Yeah. I co-sign all that, honestly. Clayton said, well, Ahsoka isn't technically Jedi anymore. I would agree. I mean, she's not. We know that very clearly. She declares as much in Rebels. I think, though, what I would say is, even though she's not a Jedi, she still has kind of like, well, I hope she still does. And maybe this is just the Ahsoka Tano that we're getting right here and now. But she still has that moral compass. We saw that, when we go back to season 7 of the Clone Wars and the Martez sisters, right? And the Martez sisters know that she's not she tells us as much, that I'm not a Jedi anymore. And yet at the very end, I forget, I'm kind of rephrasing what they said, is basically, you're basically what we would think the Jedi need to be, because she is she does have that moral compass, and she does still do what's right and what's good. Whereas the Jedi, as they saw them, were kind of almost where she's at now, where it was kind of like for the greater good, and you may have to break a few eggs, and some families may get broken because we've crashed a ship in there and killed the mom and dad or whatever happened to them, But they, they sign off on that as, well, that's just in the name of justice or in the name of peace and prosperity. Those things are going to happen.
Bad people have bad things happen to them. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Well, I'm saying that's how the Jedi may have rationalized some of this stuff, or maybe Ahsoka is kind of rational. Like, to your point, yeah, she's not technically a Jedi. I wouldn't expect her to even go to the point of torturing somebody or extracting the information from somebody, even Morgan Elsbeth of all people. But when she rationalizes it by this is for the greater good, we cannot allow the Galactic Empire to rise again, and this is probably where the rift came from her and Sabine, right? We've kind of speculated on this, and they've kind of confirmed a little bit of this in part 2, but it does sound like, hey, this isn't about Ezra, right? I think it was in this episode. She said, it's not about Ezra. And she's like, yeah, I totally get that. And I feel like that's where that riff was. And Ahsoka's thinking bigger picture here. And so, maybe it feels like she gets a free pass to be able to kind of do these types of sketchy things that she wouldn't normally do.
Right.
Okay, so we get into the home one, call back to Return of the Jedi, Mon Calamari's ship. I think it was the flagship for Admiral Akbar. It's like my favorite ship in Star Wars Galaxies, by the way, or Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. But
that was not Admiral Akbar, of course.
No,
that was a lieutenant. You could see only one dot on the uniform there.
Yeah. It sure sounded like him, but no, it was not.
Yeah, unfortunately, the actor who did Akbar's voice has been dead for a while.
Oh, is he? I didn't realize that. And I put this out on Instagram today, but Ahsoka calls out as being T6 1974. Right. 1974 is the year that Filoni was born. The T6 is just kind of the name of the ship, so there's nothing there. But I do find it coincidental that
6 is the month of June.
Yeah. He was born in June, but that's probably not intentional. So, but I think the 1974 was definitely his, because the T6 has always been around forever, right? They've called it the T6 ship forever.
Right.
That's the model.
And they spawned the idea, though. Like, maybe I'll just use my birthday on there.
maybe he did. I don't know.
I've already got the month identified. Why not just throw the year too? Right?
Throw the year too. But I'm pretty sure he was calling out his birth year there. But yeah, good to see Home One was around. I was looking at the credits, and David W. Collins does the voice of that guy doing running the one that's talking to Ahsoka. That's his voice, and you guys probably know him. He's been in Star Wars forever, mostly doing sound stuff for TVs, movies, television. But then if you've ever gone to celebrations in the past, he's usually hosting or doing some kind of a panel of some sort. If you saw his face, you would totally know who he was. But I didn't catch it. I looked at the credits and I was like, oh crap, he did the voice in this, which was, he's done voices before too. So just call that out. Let's see. They get she comes off her ship. Well, by the way, that thing takes up the entire hangar. I'm sure somebody was mad, like, crap, she brought the T6. All right, move the A-wings, get the X-wings out of the way, because Ahsoka Tano's coming with the big old ship. There's no room for her. But she parks it and gets out, meets Hera. Is it weird that she called her General Syndulla? Was she just being proper rather than saying Hera or giving them a hug? Or am I thinking that that's just not the relationship they had in Rebels?
I don't think it's the relationship they had in Rebels, but also, she is respecting her authority, I think, within the context of how they're meeting up. And Ahsoka was always somewhat formal. I think even when you go to Rebels and look at that, she was pretty formal. The only time that really broke down was when she saw Rex.
When she hugged Rex, yeah.
Yeah, for the first time. The rest of the time is actually very formal, and she's not very touchy-feely with anybody. Not that she's really has been in a lot of different ways, but I think especially adult Ahsoka has definitely been disjointed and disconnected from others. And I think, but it's also a part of her character too, of when Sabine challenges later on of, is this your home? Is this where you live? Right. It's the same idea, right? You keep everything at a distance from you. You don't actually connect with anything anymore, even though you have friends and you acknowledge that they're friends, but you still keep that distance between you just as a safeguard.
Yeah. Okay. I think he sold it to me, but I guess I don't like it. Like this is part of the problem I think I have with the Ahsoka character. Like I need to know what's going on. I want to get in her head and kind of
I think
have her tell me.
that's the opportunity, I think, of this series, is that we can see Ahsoka finally grow. And we talked about this in not only the hype show, but also in a lot of the content leading up to this, was we need to see, for Ahsoka to really continue in our hearts. And I think for Rosario Dawson in particular, as the Ahsoka in live action, we have to see Ahsoka grow and feel like we went on that journey with her. Otherwise, we'll continue to feel, I think, the way that you do, where it'll feel just like a little vacant of sorts, right? It just feels like it's like, oh, okay, but nothing great, right? We need to see that from her in this series, I think.
Yeah, I agree. It would be nice. I kind of have to see that, I guess, at some point.
Oh, I don't think you're alone either. I think there's a lot of people with you. I'm with you. I'm with you as well. I want to see it as well.
Mm-hmm. She did smile. I can't remember if it was in this episode. I think it was in part 2 that she finally smiled. Maybe she smiled a couple of times, but it's still not. Yeah. It's not, again, the bubbly.
She's not happy.
Voice.
Yeah,
she's not happy. Okay, we get into, they're explaining what happened. I love that they went to Hu Yang and said, run a scan on the lightsabers. Like, oh, that's cool. Like, if anybody's gonna know what, who built what, it's just walking database of lightsabers, which totally made sense. I love that a lot. And then we get, of course, the explanation of the star map and Thrawn. Hera says that's not possible. Thrawn died at the Battle of Lothal. At first, I was scratching my head thinking, why wouldn't she think that he died? And if you really think about it, put it in perspective, for all intents and purposes, they have no idea. They know right. Ezra left, but they really don't know the fate of Thrawn. And Ezra wasn't very clear on what was going on. He just said, see you later. I got to do this. And so I get where, they probably it would kind of be unknown to them. I think Ahsoka does enough to convince Hera that Thrawn is truly out there and it's worth pursuing again, or pursuing for the first time, as the case may be at this point. But I love that Hera's eyes kind of light up when she's, thinking, the first thing she thinks again is not who cares about Thrawn.
Right.
Her perspective is, do you think Ezra's out there? And Ahsoka says, I hope so. Right.
And that's when Ahsoka smiled.
Yeah. And I love the fact that they use the word hope, honestly, because that's just, for all the reasons we've talked about many, many times on this episode.
And again, to our point just a minute ago, I'm glad that Ahsoka shows emotion when it comes to Ezra. Like, even she has a connection with Ezra. Everybody loves this kid.
Mm-hmm. Especially Hondo. There's
that boy, gentleman.
There's so we get the, they're talking about the map that is also, eventually becomes the key. We learned that. I loved her little line, her little quip about there. It's never a straight line with you Jedi, is it? Like,
that was funny.
I thought it was very, very funny. She had some pretty good lines, especially in part 2. They brought up the Defense Council, which I hadn't really heard that term. I was trying to remember if that ever came up in Bloodline, but I don't remember if that term was ever used. And who knows? It could just be some arm of the New Republic that is strictly around defense. Not to state the obvious, but I want to dig into that here when I get some time and see if we've ever had anything that's been established as such. And then, of course, she's kind of prodding Ahsoka. Hera's trying to prod Ahsoka into, hey, you really need to reconnect with Sabine. And Sabine kind of gives us that first clue of what the relationship is like. And says, I'm not sure she'll want to help. And then she says, well, she'll do it for Ezra, not for you. Like, she's pretty clear about that. And I think that's where Ahsoka's coming from. They've had a falling out of sorts, but definitely would do it for Ezra. And I think we all know that that's exactly what she would do. So, okay. All right. So then we get to the Lothal scene and the Lothal ceremony. Holy bananas. I was like screaming when I saw we hear his voice first, Clancy Brown. Right. And then they actually on screen, because we talked about this in the final hype episode, we had said, wouldn't it be cool if they actually brought Clancy Brown in? And I honestly had no idea. I couldn't remember if he was even alive. Thankfully he is. He made his final, appearance again. What are you pulling up here?
I'm doing something. You just keep talking. Okay, you keep doing your stuff.
All right. So we get, a live action Ryder Azadi, and I mean, it's perfect. Like, I don't know what you want to say about it, because it's the dang actor himself. I love that they use the monument that we've seen as kind of, that was the mural. The monument itself was in recognition of the heroes of Lothal, those that liberated Lothal. Great stuff there. And then he turns around and says, and Commander Sabine Wren. And of course, she's not there. This was probably expected, given where she's at. But I was not expecting Senator Jai Kell.
Or Gotal.
Kotal, yeah, exactly.
Dude, I love the
I didn't even put
expression.
it in the show notes.
I love the expression. It's just like, ooh, gosh.
Yeah. I was not expecting, like, these two right here alone. So Jai and then a Gotal for live action, like, blew me away. Like, I had never thought we would have seen either one of these, much less the Gotal, but specifically Jai, being able to see him. Of course, this is not the same actor. I forget who the guy is. He played in Hook. I don't remember his name.
Yeah, he played Rufio.
Rufio. Yeah, that's what it was. He did the voice of the original Jai Kell. And for anybody that knows, Jai was his friend that was Force sensitive over at the Jedi Academy, and they had a couple of episodes together.
The Imperial Academy, right?
I'm sorry, not Jedi Academy. Yeah. Imperial Academy. Thank you. Right. And this is an actor by the name of Vinnie Thomas, who's a TikTok star. I didn't even know that's what he did, but whatever. I don't care. It was just cool that we got to see Jai Kell and a senator, no less. Senator Jai Kell representing Lothal. I mean, like, this is Filoni, again, just throwing the red meat out to those hardcore Rebels fans, and we're all better because of it.
Yeah, I was super excited that Ryder came in, though. I mean, the voice alone is just perfect, and that he's governor now just makes so much sense. And that there's even that tension between him and Sabine in some kind of ways too. That she's still the petulant child of sorts that they're having to rein in. It just it started setting the stage for who Sabine Wren still is, even after all these years.
Yeah. And this was, I'm trying to think where this was kind of cliche. I mean, I think of like a Maverick from Top Gun, right? Where they're, they're kind of doing their own thing. It was very similar. I think we drew this and we talked about this analogy in the Final Hype episode, or at least maybe in the Sabine Wren episode that we did leading up to the series. But we get this music, and I know, what was it? What was it that JW said? I forget. He said the name of the band and what they did. I am not going to be, there's too many credits, but the music, I thought it was great. Like, it was, I said White Zombie. It sounded like White Zombie at first, and then it was kind of a female singing, so that kind of really threw it off. But
the riff sounded like the riff sounded like Alice in Chains' "Check My Brain," actually.
Okay,
but,
well, there you go.
I mean, it wasn't, but it was the same type of thing. It's just a bend on the low string. Yeah.
If you go out right now, I think something that's going viral is somebody has set Beastie Boys "Sabotage" to that, and I think it works. Like, it works actually really well. But yeah, it was good to see that she's, a rebel still, and rebelling in a different way. Not there with the formal ceremony, very conveniently forgot because she probably doesn't want to be there celebrating when. How can you all be doing this when Ezra is still out there, right? And nobody else is there. It's just her. Like, everybody else would be gone. Nobody else was going to be there to celebrate. Kanan's dead. Hera's off doing stuff.
Doesn't feel right. Yeah.
Yeah. AP5 is gone. So, he's not in the mural. Never mind. And so we got two of the E-Wings. I guess I never put that together, that there was two. So I guess they're using the E-Wings now here on Lothal or in the New Republic. That's cool.
And actually what they stole, I think, Shin Hati and Balin Skull, I think, actually stole one of the. They said the new advanced fighters. So I'm assuming that's the E-Wing. Yeah. I kind of took that away as well. They didn't say it explicitly, but I'd imagine they're setting that up as kind of like one of the main standard vehicles that are being used at this time. So there's they mentioned Spectre 21. Again, call out to all the Spectre signs that we've had in Star Wars Rebels. I guess they use that Spectre moniker now as part of the Lothal forces, I would assume. Kind of cool. I love that they've used that or leaned into it a little bit here. Yeah.
And then we just get more of, she does her little antics and she does her flyby that Maverick would have done, where she, goes underneath the E-Wing and, she's crazy, hard-headed, stubborn. She's a Mandalorian. I mean, I think they did a good job of setting this character up for anybody that was not aware of what they could expect from her. And I think we're going to see more of that here.
Right. Yeah, and I think when she gets home, I think this is where the character, you start to really get an idea of where Sabine is at in this moment, right? It doesn't look like she's worn her armor in a really long time. Like, she's grown her hair out. She always had her hair cut really short because it got uncomfortable under the helmet, right? But it doesn't look like she's wearing the armor. Her helmet's tucked under a table. Everything is kind of put away. The helmets are all in disarray in the corner. Although it was cool to see all the Stormtrooper helmets and the variations of all of that, but. It's just clear that she's really checked out of whatever life that she had and left. And she's just kind of come back here and crashed and kind of wallowing a little bit in her own pity, I think.
Yeah. Well, and I right or wrong, I love the fact that she's doing it in Ezra's old place, which is where, all those helmets came from. He was collecting those. And
And then he friend zoned her, or he family zoned her. Actually, in Star Wars, I guess family zone means you're in, right?
Yeah. I mean, Luke and Leia
treated you like a sister. Like,
yeah.
All right.
Well,
I know where this goes. Yeah.
I've heard about these Skywalkers. And then we get to, you skipped the Lothcat. We're not going to talk about the Lothcat, like the live action puppet Lothcat too.
I think it's a mix. I think it's both digital and
really?
real life. Yeah.
I thought I read somewhere that it was full animatronic.
I think all the close-ups. I think even Grogu is digital sometimes though.
Yeah, I think he's digital when he's like running or they've got it, jumping around. But
and I think the Lothcat, I think it looked like it looked much more fluid in some scenes than it did in others, and so I just equated that to maybe they did have a digital version of the Lothcat, but in general, it was cute. I mean, it's no Grogu, but it was all right.
Well, I got to get that stuffed animal somewhere at some point. What did you think about Ezra's message? Like, it was kind of a different take on the message he left for the bigger group. It almost feels like he recorded this one specifically, and I think he kind of alludes to it as such.
Oh, he definitely did, yeah.
I made this recording because more than the others, I need you to understand. And here's where I feel like this message is going to play a bigger role in this series. Because the next line he says, and I skipped over the first part, but he says, as a Jedi, sometimes you have to make the decision no one else can. So that's what I did to defeat Thrawn. And then he goes into, we've been through a lot, grew up together. You're just like a sister to me. That's really weird and awkward because I think they should be together. But so where I was going with this is, as a Jedi, sometimes you have to make the decision no one else can. They're already kind of playing with this idea that she doesn't feel like she is truly a Jedi, and she may not be looked upon by others as a Jedi. Similar to, the theme of, what is a family? What does it mean to be a part of a family? What does it mean to be a Mandalorian, right? We've seen that explored in the Mandalorian series. I have a feeling Filoni is going to play with this idea of what does it mean to be a Jedi? And I can see where maybe they're doing some foreshadowing here that she may have to make a hard decision. And I'm not saying she's going to die, although that now like crept into my mind, had never really considered it, like, that happening to her. I don't think it would happen in this series, at least not in the first season, because I think she has to go through and she's going to fulfill what her destiny right now is, which is finding Ezra and bringing him back.
Right.
But I do feel like she is going to have to she probably will make a sacrifice that you would expect a Jedi to make, but she rises to that occasion and is selfless in that manner. So again, I may be reading way too much into it, but it's just interesting that he threw that line in there and we see her struggling with this idea about whether or not she is a Jedi or whether she feels like she's a Jedi.
Yeah, we know those lines don't go to waste, right? And while it definitely explains what Ezra's thinking was, and I think doubling down on what Kanan had taught him as well, and what he learned in A World Between Worlds too, of saying that sometimes, like Jedi, the reason why you don't get attached to things is because otherwise you can't make the decision that you really need to make because you just don't want to.
Yeah, and it's why he removed himself. Sorry, but that's why he removed himself from the kind of running point on rescuing Hera. He didn't want to have that kind of come into play. So sorry, just to kind of point that out.
No, exactly. I mean, and that's exactly the point. And that's what he learned from Kanan. And so that he needs to make sure that Sabine understands that on some level, that it was not him abandoning the team or doing something because he wanted to be a martyr or something along those lines. It was just more about, there's no one else that can do this. I'm the only one who's in the position to be able to call the Purrgil. I guess not technically call them, but kind of talk to them and do, when they get here, do the needful, as they like to say sometimes. So convey that message to her to make sure she really gets it. And again, she's probably watched this thing a million times at this point over the years, right?
Yeah.
So she understands it, but it doesn't necessarily make her feel any better. But I'm with you. I think it'll come back around. Usually these things do come back around. They're very circular in that kind of way. And she will have to make a decision that maybe not as a Jedi in the way of using the Force and things like that, but making the call and understanding you need to do something and being the one courageous enough to do it, even though you will take personal loss as a result of it. But that's the right thing to do because no one else can or no one else will.
Yeah. Yeah. Well put. So we flip back to the Night Sister Temple. We've got Shin, Baylan, Morgan, and Marok, who's our first kind of appearance of Marok, although he's just kind of standing brooding in the background there under his helmet, or her helmet, whatever it may be, their helmet. And this is where we get confirmation this was a temple. Night Sisters of Dathomir. Most people probably are not going to know who that is, although they did mention the Night Sisters in, what was it? They mentioned the Night Sisters in, was it Mando? Live action?
I'm trying to remember now.
Yeah, that'll come back to me in a little bit. But he says you're a witch. I was like, why would she not like just own that? She didn't, and she turns around and says a survivor. Now I know why she says survivor, because
Right.
Dooku wiped all of them out, and somehow she survived, which makes complete sense. And so, if you didn't know, this happened in the Clone Wars series. Pretty much obliterated the entire planet, killed all the Night Sisters. But I like that. I love that she says that she's a survivor, and she doesn't necessarily explicitly acknowledge that she is a witch, although she is a witch. We saw her use Night Sister magic later on in part 2. But do you think there was anything in that she didn't acknowledge that he called her a witch, and just she kind of went on and said, no, she didn't even say no. She just said, I'm a survivor.
I think it's you can't label me with just one thing, right? And I think when you've gone through all that, and she looks at Shin Hati in a lot of really curious ways. You know, she orders her around, tells her, send this one, to Lothal, right? And then in episode 2, she has another task for her. She basically kind of doles out the mission, but she looks at her funny. And I think it's this, almost like this impetuous youth of like, she needs to learn something, or I need to test her to see what she's really, truly capable of doing. But I think, Morgan Elsbeth doesn't take the bait though either. She's been through this enough. She doesn't really care what other people think. She has a mission. She has a belief, a core belief, and absolute loyalty to the grand plan of Admiral Thrawn, right? Mm-hmm. And whatever, this child won't get in the way of that. And this child, while she has ability, she can go continue to prove herself to see if she continue to be useful to me. But I will survive, and I will bring about, the next era of the Empire. And that's all she really cares about. So she's able to rise above it. And I think that's why I like this character so much. She just gives zero, what's,
Yeah.
Everything about her is like, nope, I have a plan. If you're not on board, then get out, type of thing. And, everybody that's in the way, that's a casualty she's willing to add to the list, So I love Morgan Elsbeth. I think she's just great. I think that the Night Sister aspect could be really interesting to see how that comes and plays out over time, though. So it's not just Jedi versus Jedi type of battles. We actually get magics and sorcery, things that we haven't really seen on screen in a while, and definitely not in live action, and definitely haven't seen in a long time, even on an animated series. So I think that would be a lot of fun. It was really cool to see some of that, just the very basic levels of it, of course, start to come through in episode 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And to your point about, kind of no F's given coming from Morgan Elsbeth, like he mentions earlier, just before this, he says something about, it's luck, and she says it's fate. And she almost has this sense of like
the Night
confidence.
Sisters, they believe in fate, right?
Yeah.
And
They're all predicated on fate.
Yeah. And Shin Hati's words a little bit later on, I'm sorry to interrupt you. It was, what web is she, or what thread is she spinning, right? Mm-hmm. That's the threads of fate, right? So that it's the manipulation of time and space with webs and everything. It's those historical cultural aspects of things where you are manipulating fate in some kind of way. Yeah. And that's where it's really amusing the way that Baylan Skoll actually responds. It's almost with amusement. This isn't witchcraft, type of thing.
Yeah.
It's just.
Yeah, he says, do as she says, it's not witchcraft. And then he goes on, Ahsoka Tano's former apprentice on Lothal. You're looking for Sabine Wren.
I love the little smile that she gives too. Shin Hati does.
Yeah, she's pretty excited. So
she's like,
kill somebody else.
Yeah. Well, and a named character, they're not just nameless. I get to go kill someone with an actual name on the title.
Who I'm sure she's probably, I guess, knows about.
I would imagine they've heard of these names of these people. I mean, they're pretty
I got a question
high profile.
about that. I got a question about that. Like, so Baylan seems to know that, because he didn't know, like, he didn't really have a reaction when Morgan, he rescues or frees Morgan Elsbeth, and they're kind of walking down the hallway, and she says, Ahsoka Tano. It doesn't even faze him. And I couldn't read him as that being like, I don't know who that is, or I don't care, right? I know who she is and I don't care. I couldn't gauge that one way or the other. But he does seem to have some insight that at one point Ahsoka Tano took on Sabine Wren as an apprentice, as her Padawan, which kind of plays into the whole theme here of this episode, which is Master and Apprentice, right? We're getting two sides of one that didn't work out so well and another that seems to be flourishing.
Right.
But any thoughts around how Baylan would have known, or Morgan would have known? Does it really matter, I guess? Or is it just a notoriety thing that word got out that, there was a Jedi and she had a Padawan again?
I think Morgan Elsbeth, her job is to know all the things, right? And to do the research and have spies everywhere. I mean, clearly, And we see this more clearly in episode 2, that there are a lot of people working for the Empire.
Yeah. No,
And Morgan Elsbeth has a lot of people in her network. So we get better clarity, I think, in the next episode than here. So I think that's kind of where that plays in. But again, I think it's just her business, right? She's the one who's supposed to usher in this new era of Thrawn. So for her to have the contacts and have information that others don't have, and then she has a resource like a Balin Skull, who has some of that historical reference to with the Jedi Order, in order to fill in some of those gaps and use that to her advantage as well. So I think it's kind of a little of everything. I like that this character has those resources so she can go and figure those things out.
Yeah. So we move over.
It's super convenient too, by the way.
Well, it's very convenient. So thank you, Dave Filoni. We get back over to Sabine Wren sleeping. She's having what I would expect to have been like reoccurring dreams or nightmares. You can clearly hear the Purrgil. You hear Ezra's some of his lines that he says in that those final moments before him and the Purrgil, leave. And she's dreaming of this, right? And suddenly she wakes up, and then we get what looks to be a very similar shot to the opening of Star Wars Rebels, where she runs out to the balcony. You see the T6 fly over. I think it's even being escorted by X-Wings, if I'm not mistaken. Right. They all kind of blur together now, some of these scenes. But yeah, so, it was a cool, nice little nod to the opening there of Star Wars Rebels. And then we get to the docking tower. So Sabine makes her way out to this docking tower on Lothal. And this is where we get a lot of the body language and the awkwardness that you were talking about. And I would agree, some of these shots, I don't know, they lingered maybe just a tad too long at times.
Right. I agree.
And I think he was, and again, it's not lost on me why he was doing it. I think he was trying to make us feel awkward about their
mission
awkwardness.
Accomplished, yeah.
Right. It was, because it's unsettling, right? You could tell there was some tension there, and that's a very different take or I guess different relationship than we saw where they were at the end of Rebels. It seemed like everything was hunky-dory, and like they both were smiling, and we're going to go find Ezra, and this is going to be a great adventure kind of thing, and It didn't really plan out that way. So, but we could see all that. I mean, they're avoiding eye contact, the body language, Ahsoka standing with her arms crossed, Sabine Wren is standing there with her arm crossed. This is trivial, but in the trailer, we get the line of, it's been a while. We hear Sabine clearly say that, and it was removed from that. I guess they didn't necessarily need to say that, and maybe just for the sake of time, they cut it out. But I was like waiting for it, like, oh, she's going to say it. She's going to say it. And they skip right over it. Mm-hmm. And it's almost kind of, I wouldn't say weird. Like I can narratively explain why Ahsoka just jumps immediately to, I think I know how to find Ezra. Like avoid the awkwardness. I'm not even going to touch it. And I'm going to just play up on what I know is going to really bring her over, which is, hey, I found Ezra. And, I guess it worked, right? But I guess any thoughts on why that line was removed or anything else about this scene?
I really don't know why it was removed at all. And to be honest with you, it seemed like it would have helped fill in the vacancy, unless they just wanted that silence to linger and just make it really uncomfortable. And I have a feeling it was probably just that. I mean, I thought the line would have helped accomplish that the same way, though. So I think it worked either way. Mm-hmm. I probably would have enjoyed not having the silence, having the silence filled just a little bit. But again, maybe that was the point.
Yeah. I think the loss for me is I just love the way she delivers it, the way Sabine delivers that line. There's just something about her posture and the delivery itself that just screams Sabine Wren. And
it accentuates that you abandoned me, right?
Right, yeah.
But I think when you look at the scenes beforehand with the conversation with Ahsoka and Hera, Ahsoka and Huyang, it's kind of established a lot of that too. So is it necessary to do it again? No. Do we get a little more later on when they're at the table and they have that conversation?
Yeah,
yes.
It's reinforced. Yeah.
Yeah. So how many times do you need to kind of hear it? And so maybe when they looked at it as a totality, it was just, one of these will kind of cut just because it starts laying on a bit thick. But I think that's the point. It's supposed to be laying on thick.
Yeah. So let's transition to the next scene here, which is just that, right? We're in the headquarters, or I guess the main area of that T6 ship. Ahsoka comes out. She's got her venti latte mocha with her, or whatever it is that she's carrying, her little Starbucks coffee cup. And, Sabine is looking at the map. She says that I found this on Arcana. Don't remember that we've ever had that ever used before in canon or Legends, to be honest. I think it's a new kind of place. She said it's a stronghold for witches of Dathomir from thousands of years ago. All of that's already been established. And, this is where Sabine is like, okay, yeah, but what are you doing, right? Kind of thing. She's like, you're still living here. Like, what are you doing with yourself? And she says, I go where I'm needed.
Right.
And this kind of plays into what we mentioned about, is she kind of a way seeker to kind of bring in, High Republic stuff? They've never really said as much. I think we've drawn the analogies to a way seeker and how Ahsoka probably could fit that pretty easily. But it does feel like she is just, she's, I'm going where I'm needed. I don't know that she's speaking about where the New Republic needs. I think it's really the Force. Like wherever the Force calls me, that's where I go. And so, yeah, I need to be nomadic, and this is my home. And I don't want to attach to anybody because that's already burned me a few times. So it's kind of a sad state, I think, for Ahsoka.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but I think also, it makes sense where she's at. She doesn't have a reason to tie down to any place.
Mm-hmm.
And would she do it with Luke? Would she stay and help Luke? Maybe, but she doesn't want to adhere herself to the Jedi doctrine as closely though either. So I think when you look at what makes sense for you to actually attach to and set roots down, none of the above. And so it just keeps her active. It keeps her, but I think it's also a defense mechanism too, where she doesn't have to sit and deal with some of the things and the decisions that she's made, and maybe some of the regret with a Sabine specifically. And in this case, at least, there's a lot of opportunity for her to not have to worry about that if she's constantly keeping herself busy and doing other things.
Yeah. Well, and the follow-up line, and this is where I'll lean on the audience as well. Anybody that's tuned into the show in the live chat, and certainly Jonesy, I want your thoughts here as well. But Sabine says, not always. So in answer to Ahsoka saying, I go where I'm needed, there's a dramatic pause from Sabine, and she says, not always, like almost kind of a dig at her.
Right.
And they never explore it. I'm sure we'll probably get, Filoni doesn't throw this stuff in there without some level of explanation down the road. But we're led to believe that at some point, Sabine either needed her or Sabine felt like she was needed somewhere and Ahsoka wasn't there. The most obvious answer, based on what we've seen in part 1 and part 2, was she didn't go where she was needed, and maybe Sabine needed her, right? Needed her to be kind of the master that she wanted, or to be somebody that was supportive, or she was in a very sticky situation. It could just be simply being there for Sabine. But any thoughts around where this is coming from? What do we not know right now about where Ahsoka was needed once?
What do we not know, Albert? That's a great question. A question to ask that we don't know the answer to. Yeah. I don't know. I think it's something they need to tell us, because clearly the conversation with Hera afterwards has also got more to it as well, because even when she says, I wish you would have changed more, right? So there was clearly some dissonance and just differences of how they approach things, maybe a bit of Sabine's rebelliousness coming through and not being able to connect, and maybe Sabine just dealing with the loss of Kanan, dealing with the loss of Ezra, maybe the rest of the family kind of breaking up and going their own specific ways. And she might have looked to Ahsoka to kind of be that family member as well. And maybe she needed more of, this is kind of the Jedi way too, of not fulfilling or not, helping them get to that healthy emotional state and giving them that emotional comfort and safe space. And instead keeping it relatively cold and not giving her that shoulder to help her and teach her how to learn with those, rather than just giving her more like Jedi platitudes about how you're supposed to handle this and handle loss and everything else. Yeah. It wasn't that emotional state that Anakin always needed, or some of these many other characters that we've seen throughout Star Wars that don't get that, that state. So maybe it's along those lines of what she felt like she really needed in order to kind of accept and grieve and then move on. Really, people just wanted her to skip straight to moving on, right? Because they got tired of waiting.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Ash, I'm going to come to your comment. I'm going to come back to your comment here in a little bit. So I'm skipping over that for now. Clayton says, I feel like it's a jab at their master and apprentice type relationship, or possibly a nod to Rebels after Ezra saves her from the world between worlds and then she leaves. And that's pretty much what she does. She just bails. Ezra says, come and find me. And then we don't see her again until the epilogue of the Rebels series. So
now, granted, she was stuck on Malachor without transportation. So, yeah.
Oh, come on. I'm kidding. Yeah, that's a good point. Not lost on us by any means. And so going back to what Clayton was saying about their job, or the jab at the master and apprentice relationship, we get a little bit more of that here in the next couple moments of dialogue. She makes it. The way she says master, like, ooh, dang, a lot of attitude there. Definitely some hurt feelings, and we get confirmation that they've never made things easier for each other. You know, it's the stubbornness of Sabine Wren with Ahsoka. And I never really put those two together because I think we talked about this during the maybe it was the Final Hype or the Sabine episode, but they really didn't have any scenes together in Rebels. It's, as crazy as that sounds, Ahsoka was almost exclusively tied to Kanan and to Ezra, but we never really had anything there. And then for Ahsoka to take her on as an apprentice at an older age, with the stubbornness, with her background, I mean, it felt like it was a recipe for disaster. Yet Ahsoka felt like this was something she needed to do, and it's very clear that they didn't see eye to eye, and they had a lot of bad blood that kind of existed at one point.
It's so funny that Hera was the one to convince Kanan to finally get over himself and open and be more open to training Sabine and doing it in a way that helps Sabine. And now Hera's the one that's doing it again with Ahsoka. And Ahsoka finally comes to her a bit of a revelation as well, of how she needs to approach Sabine. I think that's more the second episode, but some of those roots and some of the seeds are being sowed right, throughout these scenes right through here.
Yeah. Dante's here. Didn't even realize he was. I think he chimed in earlier. So he says, this has a lot of assumed subtext, but I got the feeling that Sabine thought more of the Rebels crew belonged on Lothal, but everyone but her left. Yeah, I can see that. Her feeling like abandoned, like, what the heck, guys?
Well, and at the end of Rebels, that's what Zeb was like. No, we'll stay here and do it ourselves, right? We're here for the Lothal people. The fight never came. Right. We're kind of assumed to believe that they all kind of scattered and did their own thing at the end of the epilogue of Rebels, and that seemed okay for Sabine in that moment at least. But yeah, it's curious. I think that's a part of it though, dealing with the loss across the board, and then Ahsoka wasn't really going to give her that kind of support.
Yeah. And she never went back to, her clan, Vizsla. So never went back to, that we know of anyway. She never went back to Concordia or Concord or wherever it is, or any of the planets. So, yeah, I can see where she felt like she was abandoned. And especially this core family. I mean, they spent the better part of 4 seasons, at least in real life, nurturing this family idea.
That's how they measured on the Ghost. How many seasons have we been live?
Right. I think we're about halfway through season 3, sir.
That's right. We're on episode 12 of season 2.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll come back to this where she says, can I take this? And when she says, no, you can't, I was like, she's going to take it. I mean, if you've seen the character, she's freaking going to take this. She's going to do what she wants.
If you've ever seen a TV show or a movie, she's going to take it. It doesn't matter if it's Star Wars or not.
Mm-hmm. Ahsoka, and we mentioned this earlier, but for the sake of discussion, she says it's not about finding Ezra, it's preventing another war. And she's like, you think I don't know that? And I think Ahsoka's probably in the right. Like, I think at some point, maybe, she felt like Sabine was getting too far off course, right or wrong. And it suddenly turned into Ezra. And for Sabine, the inverse of that was it's no longer about Ezra and it's only about Thrawn. And that's where I feel like they really kind of did not see eye to eye there.
Right.
Confirmation from Hu Yang about the lightsabers, right? We got all that. We know that now that Baylan was a Jedi, survived Order 66, now a mercenary for hire. But, it looks like he's taken on a Padawan. We speculated about the Padawan braid that Shin is wearing. Well, I want to get into that. We're not talking about that now. We'll talk more about that here on Sunday's show. And then just that whole master and apprentice relationship. We're kind of seeing, I guess, even in this moment, in this scene, we're seeing both sides of that. That are coming from the two master and apprentice relationships. There's also another sick burn because when he calls Ahsoka in there, he said it's formal. He says formidable foes for her alone, and then he accentuates the word alone. Like, you're alone. This is your choice. You did this to yourself. You'd be better off if you had somebody with you. I'm not going to say who, but it could be that person in the other room over there.
Right.
So again, another dig, and of course she takes the thing and then leaves. And this is where I want to go back to Ash said, so this to me shows that Ahsoka still trusts Sabine. She's mad that she took the map, but she doesn't chase her down. Some Anakin coming out in her and letting it play out. In other words, like, hey, a little bit of chaos can be good for people, right? We all grow from that kind of thing. And I think Anakin certainly would. And
she knew where she was going, right? I mean, she wasn't going to go that far. She's going back to the tower. She's going home. And she's going to do what they wanted her to do. So, I mean, yeah, the risk was low that something was going to go on. Now, they didn't anticipate being found, of course, which always seems to happen in these types of scenarios. But again, she wasn't super worried about it. So yeah, there's a certain level of trust, but also a more practical sense of it too. Like, she's not going anywhere that I can't find her. So
yeah. There, we get next back to the T6. So, we're getting confirmation that they've got history here. Excuse me. And Hera's coming out, and I think this is where I can't remember if she's in physical form. I think she's still in hologram form. Yeah. But this is where I felt like it was really Hera. Like, I think Mary Elizabeth, is it Winstead?
Winstead, yeah.
Yeah. I think she does a good job here as portraying Hera. And more importantly, I feel like that protective mother is coming out. Like, she's almost advocating for Sabine in a motherly relationship more than just, hey, this is good for the rebellion or this is good for the Jedi or whatever you are now. It just felt like she was, standing up for her kid and saying, you got to give her a chance. And, you got to understand where she's coming from, who she is, that kind of thing. And so I love that. I felt like that was so within character. And that's something that Hera would do, right, given the tension that was kind of built at that point between her and between Ahsoka and Sabine.
Yeah, it's that motherly nature that comes out of Hera, which is always one of the things we love most about her, is that she can go from leader to motherly figure to disciplinary, within the context of 2 sentences, right? And kind of do all of the above. So it's great that this is coming out front and center here. And you're right, she's doing a great job in these moments here. Some other ones, maybe a little less, we're not quite there yet. We're kind of getting used to her as the character, but I think in many of these moments, she's hitting it right on the money.
Yeah. She makes that comment about, I bet your master found you difficult at times. I was like, ooh, is that too soon? I don't know how Ahsoka took that.
Do you think she actually knew what she was saying when she made the comment, though?
No, I don't think she did.
I don't think she meant it in the way that it came out, yeah.
No, I mean, even like everything that we've known canon-wise has said that most people, very, very few people, knew that Anakin Skywalker turned into Vader, right? You can probably count them on 10 fingers.
And it's not a topic that Ahsoka talks about at all. So,
yeah, 10 fingers. That's all you need. So, and then, and she says, Anakin, I know, everybody's doing the math. I'm like, wait, how did you come up with 10? Anakin never finished her training. She says that she walked away from him and the Jedi. Of course, this calls back all kinds of emotions and scenes that we've seen, whether she's walking away from the academy or, her churning away and not going to Anakin when she was feeling that something was going on. To be fair, she really couldn't because she was stuck with Rex on that stupid ship. But, she feels some blame for not being there for Anakin and just kind of where their relationship ended. When they walked away, that was, it was cordial, but it was a weird moment. There was a lot of pressure on both sides of them. Right. She had to go deal with Maul and the Mandalorians, and, he was going off trying to figure out what to do with Palpatine and bring Grievous to an end. Anyways, so just like I walked away from Sabine, I mean, Ahsoka acknowledges that she did walk away from her. I know it's probably foreshadowing. We'll probably get more context here. I think there's a story there that will kind of help, build and play on everything else that we've seen so far. So we won't necessarily need to speculate on the reasons, but we get to the final episode, our final scene here, where this is, they've already teased the helmet, by the way, this Sabine helmet, or that it was down there underneath the bottom. I think there was a couple more shots. I'm like, just pick up the freaking helmet already. We want to
actually see her blaster on the side too. It wasn't as well lit, but you can actually see it laying on a crate, kind of to the top right of the helmet as well.
Oh, okay. I didn't catch that. Yeah. They're and then she's trying to solve this Rubik's Cube, and she, there's 3 sisters, 3 heads, 3 little dials that turn. I don't know what the significance of the number 3 here. Maybe it's just a play on the rule of 2. Maybe this is the rule of 3 that the Night Sisters live by. Some new facet of their religion.
Pretty sure I was watching Hellraiser.
But when she finally figures it out, the first thought that came to mind was, holy crap, because I think in the course of conversation, like we've always talked within the context of wherever Ezra is, wherever Thrawn is, or wherever they are, that they were far enough away and removed enough that it was impossible to get back. I don't know that I've ever really put it in the context of, holy crap, they left to an entirely different galaxy. When you think about like unknown regions, maybe, or wild space, even then, it's not really, that's still kind of within the realm of our own galaxy here. But this really opens up all kinds of crazy thoughts and speculation now on my part. And I know we had a really good conversation in Discord just the last 24 hours. I mean, we've talked about the Yuzong Vong. We can talk about the Grisk. We can talk about the Chiss. I mean, whoever you want to throw. The Ricotta, I mean, yeah, certainly. I mean, the
We
Ricotta came from another galaxy.
Yeah, we had talked about the Ricotta in our Dawn of the Jedi episode too.
Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, all of the stuff's on the table now. Like, yeah, we've not gone in this direction really, at least in canon, of another galaxy. So we're kind of here, man. The door is open now. So there's a lot of different directions we could go.
Well, and it's all bets are off because you know I'm sorry, I gotta highlight Clayton's the Mortis trilogy, Father, Son, and Daughter. I think he's talking about the three, but I don't know. Maybe this is where the Celestials came from, or what was the other thought I just had? I mean, I guess the way the Force works or doesn't work, or the way I mean, all bets are off. If we're in another galaxy, it's wide open, and I think that's pretty exciting from a narrative perspective. And this is what I was saying earlier on. We were talking about the writing, or just kind of what we had in line, or what this show has in store for us. The fact that we got Filoni now, and now he's got a whole galaxy to play with, and he gets a lot of liberty there, and still be able to kind of tie that into Star Wars. That's super exciting, man. Like, it's non-committal, right? Because we don't have to worry about, oh, this is just something that's going to now happen every time. This is like a once in a, millennial kind of effect that someone's going to be able to go back in there, but we're going to get to pull the curtain back and see what life is like out there, or how this has changed Thrawn, or how it's changed Ezra in a way. And I don't know, lots of possibilities.
And then the whole aspect of, does the Force work in the same way or not? I mean, like
exactly.
I said, there's a whole nother completely, you could turn everything on its head. And you're right. No, we've taken the governor off of what do we have to concern. And again, it opens you up when you talk about like wanting Star Wars to kind of take this out of Ahsoka. But if you want to take Star Wars in a different direction overall, or have a completely different galaxy that you can go and explore and not have to be bound to what you know, man, you've now opened that up. You now have that opportunity to go and do that if you really want to at some point.
Blue 127 asks, Ricottans are from the Star Wars galaxy, though, right? So yes, technically they are. And I don't want to misspeak here. They are from this galaxy. However, the Ricottans have been around for such a long time, and they already had hyperspace travel by the time we were introduced to them, like in the Dawn of Jedi series and just right after that. So presumably they had pretty much conquered our galaxy. So where I was going was, they could have come from another galaxy, or they may have explored into other galaxies. We don't know. There's not a lot that's really kind of talks about it, but just the opportunity, the excitement that's around bringing in things of Legends. And even if they change it, they don't have to be beholden to what's come before us in Legends. They could, switch it up a little bit and kind of give us a new take on the Ricottans, or what's the other one? It's not the Grist. There's another ancient, they look like little funny characters. The name will come to me here in a little bit, but okay, so let me get back on track here because we're almost done. But so yeah, an entire galaxy altogether. We get the HK droid that shows up, and she runs out there, her being Sabine, and this is where she calls Huyang and says, for backup. And he goes to Ahsoka and says, we have a problem. She grabs her lightsaber, and it's weird. Like, it's funny how not funny, but I guess I liked that she picked it up and went like, holy crap, I haven't held this thing. I mean, I got the sense that she hadn't held it in quite some time.
Right.
And was probably even thinking, is this really the right thing? Like, should I, am I going to be able to use this or anything? She just had a moment with that lightsaber, which I enjoyed quite a bit.
I was surprised that she didn't bring the blaster at all, but yeah, she went straight to that because that's the weapon of a Jedi, and that's really what she wants to be, right? So
right.
It made
not
sense.
As clumsy or as random as I'm sorry.
Well, she's pretty good with a blaster, so I don't know that she's random or clumsy at all, but it would have been maybe not the most practical thing to do, but at the same time, that's where she thinks she should be doing, I think, in that moment.
Yeah. And then she walks out there, and then we get, of course, Shin Hati, and Duel of Fate starts. If you hear it in the background very, very slightly. No, it's not.
No, you don't, yes.
Yeah, it's not Duel of Fates. But we had that moment, right? That's kind of a standoff, and she's got her green lightsaber. She ignites the red lightsaber, and I thought, holy crap, we're gonna get a lightsaber fight. I wasn't expecting to get this fight until part 2, part 3.
Right.
Makes sense now that we know kind of how it all played out. But man, Shin looks crazy. And I love the fact the way they both went into their stances. She gets in, I think that's the Form 1 stance that Ezra was teaching her and Kanan was teaching her back in Star Wars Rebels.
Yeah, ready position.
I think that was, the ready position. I think that was purposeful. I love that callback there. She does look rusty, though, and I think that was intentional. Like, when you see her fight, she looks clumsy. She doesn't look like she's sure of herself. She has a lot of big swinging, overpowering type movements that you wouldn't expect from a Jedi. Maybe if you were wielding the dark saber, I was thinking, well, maybe she's not remembering how to use this thing the right way. But she was also the aggressor. Like Shin Hati didn't like attack her first. Sabine attacked her first, and she was the one that was trying to engage and be on the offensive. And Shin was kind of deflecting her. I mean, she literally threw her around the entire match. It was very one-sided, although I felt like Sabine was doing a pretty good job. So I actually really loved this fight, everything about it. And I think we're going to see a different version of her, because I think in the trailers, not to spoil anything, again, this is from the trailers, where there is some moment in there where it looks like we're going to have hopefully a montage, 80s montage. But if not, Sabine is being trained again, or that training is continuing from Ahsoka. And so I expect at some point we're going to see a different Sabine, in her Rocky level kind of training, and she's going to be a Billy Badass with the lightsaber.
Right.
But your thoughts on the fight, I guess, anything you want to add to that?
That was good. I like that Sabine still showed ability, but also clearly hasn't done this for a while. And Shin Hati was, clearly the, patient, but also the favorite in this one without any kind of, with no doubt. And I think that's important. And I'm with you though. The trailer, we had the scene where, Shin Hati saying you have no power. So we know that they're going to meet again, and it will still be a similar type of bout where Sabine is struggling to, accept who she is or open herself up to the Force or whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. So we're going to get another one, but I think it was really cool to see this really up front and a really good high-spirited battle. I thought it was entertaining too. I thought it had the right pacing and everything else to go with it. So it actually felt like a legit fight. And while Shin Hati I don't think she was trying her absolute best. I think she was definitely having to work at it. And you could see that Sabine does have quite a bit of ability, and she has had training before. So she wasn't just an easy, quick kill, which I was really happy to see.
Yeah. And it was a good fight. Like it felt like it was quite a moment for both of them. It wasn't over very quickly. And the way this ended. So when they previewed this last Friday or last Monday, I think is when it was, or Tuesday, whatever it was, they did it about a week ago. They did a preview for some folks. Some folks saw it, and the non-spoiler stuff that I saw all said the same thing, that there was a shocking ending at the end of the first episode. And when this fight was going on, like I paused it and I went, oh crap, there's only like 5 minutes left. This is it. And I thought, oh no, it's got to be like Sabine dies or gets hit or something. Like I knew something tragic was going to happen. So I almost kind of spoiled it for myself, but I guess I really wasn't expecting the lightsaber in her stomach or on her side.
Right.
A lot of people have been discussing this, and let me just say, like, get over it. Like, if you're really bent out of shape that yet another person has been stabbed with a lightsaber and they lived, then I get it. You're supporting your boy Qui-Gon Jinn. We freaking love Qui-Gon Jinn to the moon and back, or the moons of wherever and back.
Diego.
Fine, whatever. Pick your planet. But the point is, like, it's not a mortal wound. We know that from part 2. You can see it. It's off to the side, right?
And you can see it actually pretty clearly in the shot itself.
In the shot itself, when you slow it down, right? I get that. But the other thing too, and this is me again theorizing. This is what I put in Discord that night. Like, Ahsoka is right there, and we don't know what level of training she has at this point. Presumably, they're exploring new ideas now that Luke has access to all the stuff, the crap that Palpatine was hoarding. So could she have done something? I'm not saying force healing, so don't get crazy. I'm not saying that. But she could have force stabilized her, and I'm going to lean into like my old Star Wars West End game stuff, right? Ahsoka was right there. That's different than where Palpatine was. And then the argument that I heard was, well, then how come Kenobi didn't do it? Well, Kenobi was a Padawan. He had no concept of this. You and I have discussed the dark path, or I guess I shouldn't say dark path, but you and I have discussed the danger that comes with potentially force healing people and being able to bring life back to people, right? That's a tricky path. So I can see where the Jedi have purposely put that off. But somebody like Ahsoka, who's no longer a Jedi, who's already maybe tortured somebody, and is willing to do whatever she needs to do for the fate of the galaxy, knowing that Sabine is the only one that can decipher this thing, or she needs Sabine's ability to be able to understand where the star map leads. Maybe she did do something there to kind of just keep her alive until she get her onto a back tank or whatever they did to bring her in. So, sorry, I'm on a soapbox, but I just hate the fact that everybody's mad that Sabine lived when there's a lot of reasons why she would have. But what do you think?
I mean, it wasn't a mortal wound. I mean, again, so Ahsoka's ship was right there, and I'm far more practical. She probably had medical supplies on the ship. That is a very well-stocked ship.
Yeah.
You know, so for her to get her from point A to a hospital, point B, not that hard. And it was only a few minute trip. So again, she could respond quickly. And I'm with you. I think this is just kind of overblown for the people that were a little upset about this. But I think, again, we continue to talk about stakes, right? And I think this is one of those things where you have to show that your characters can get hurt and you have to worry a little bit about them. Now we could say on the inverse of that and say, well, now I don't have to worry about anybody dying because they won't even do that. But it's episode 1. You're not going to go kill the main character that you've seen clearly in trailers later on too, right? So we know she lives. But I think it was just important to say that these characters can get hurt. They're not immune to any kind of damage, or not just emotional damage, but physical damage as well. And I think that's important for you to feel and also to understand the skill level of what they're up against with Baylan, Shin, and even Morgan Elsbeth, right? And potentially Thrawn later on. You have to build up the villains. You have to build up the bad guys that they're actually a legitimate threat. You know, and this is why we talked about Yuuzhan Vong in Discord and a little bit in the chat here. And I think that's why Yuuzhan Vong were always so good as a villain, because you actually had to respect them in some way. And that's what this is doing here, right? If you don't respect your villains, then you don't never have to really worry about, is your character going to, make it out or suffer, or what is the, in Vader's words, what loss are you going to have to learn or teach, right, in order for you to make progress in some way. So I like that we did this. I think this is really good because, yeah, it was shocking. It was surprising to see it. But also I think it was necessary that our characters can get hurt and we should worry about them, although I'm not going to worry that much about them, But again, I like that our villains are really good at what they do and they're willing to just pull the trigger. They don't have any remorse over this stuff. You're on mute.
Yeah, got to edit that out. We get the where the blackness, it goes to black, and then we get the the message of for our friend Ray, which was really sentimental.
That was sweet. Yeah,
it was very sweet that they did that. So, man, that's just a huge loss, and I feel like that pain's going to just.
We knew it was coming. Yeah, we knew we were going to see this, and if we really attach to the character, which we have, every scene he's in, he's just a presence. I mean, an incredible presence. So he's so good, and I love this character already. So I'm really curious to see where it goes.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, like the pain is really with their family, right? But for
absolutely.
us as viewers and people that have come to, because this is the first thing I've ever seen him in. I know, like my brother, who's been on the show, and a number of other folks in Discord have said they've seen him in other things and how good he was, and I've just unfortunately never seen anything, but I'm like just enamored by what he's done so far with his character. So yeah, it's going to continue to hurt more and more. Okay, so we get into the credits, and we'll end on this part here, and I'll keep this short. I think we've already talked about, I totally get what you're saying. They've done this a lot. We've seen it in pretty much every Marvel series, right, that they've done. They've done some kind of a cool credits thing, like similar to Game of Thrones. We've seen it in other HBO series. Netflix jumped on the bandwagon. They did their stuff. Amazon did their stuff, even with Lord of the Rings most recently. You name it. Every show has done this. So what I would say is, well, maybe at least they threw it at the very end. I do like that it's Kiner's music. I think it's a very interesting, like that whole main theme is great. So it's set to great music. But, as I was watching it, I'm thinking, wait a minute, there's like things that are that I think are going to happen based on what we've seen in the teaser trailer. And I thought, what if they're like signaling high level, these are the steps that we should expect? Because when you watch this, the journey starts to find Thrawn and Ezra. We see it moving through different solar systems. We're still in the same galaxy. If you look at it, right, we're just making these short jumps, these short hops, and one solar system to here, and I can see where that there's probably a natural path there. But eventually, they come across a wolf, and I thought, okay, well, if this plays out, maybe we're going to see a Loth wolf, right? That would be cool. It wouldn't be unprecedented. We've seen it before. Then we get a couple of more solar systems that they pass through. Then they see one Purrgil. And that leads them into this long stretch of nothing in the credits, right? You can see it. And throughout that, you see, that's where we see the 3 or 4 Purrgil, like they're navigating, migrating to whatever it is. Right. We then get to what looks to be kind of like a new galaxy because we went for a very long time with nothing. I'm assuming that's when we finally get to Ezra and Thrawn. It goes through, at one point it goes through 3 moons. I don't know if there's anything symbolic about that.
Yeah, and then it splits, and then everything comes back into one point.
And it comes together, and I don't know the significance of this other than the first thing that came to mind. But there's 7 lines, so I counted them. There's 7 lines that are all kind of congregating. When you look at this, the end point, which again, if you should have put the hat on again for this one. But when you look at all the lines coming together, there are no lines that connect to that final dot. These 7 lines, he's got it on now. Those 7 lines all kind of come together, which again, presumably is where Thrawn and Ezra are at. And I thought, well, what's the significance of 7? And the only thing that came to mind was, there are 7 specters technically. Well, there's technically 6 now because Kanan bit it, right? But I don't know. Maybe there's something about 7. Maybe there's 7 people, or we're going to get, if you add up everybody, Sabine, you've got Ahsoka, you've got Baylan, Shin, Merrick, who else? Morgan, that's 6.
Right.
Huyang, 7.
Jason.
I don't know.
Jason.
I didn't say Jason. No, because I wasn't throwing them in. Like, I don't think she would take them from the long. What the hell was a ghost at? Anyways, no, I don't think she would take him along on this kind of. That seems very irresponsible as a parent, just personally speaking myself. But anyway, I don't know. There may be some significance to the 7 lines being drawn there. It could be 7 different people, or maybe there are other people that will kind of come and play into the story where they're all kind of congregating. But again, I don't know. That's crazy, probably Jedi devilry on my part. But all
will be revealed in time.
I just want there to be meaning in everything, even the final credits.
And again, they use they label everything too, right? And it's so frustrating we can't read it.
Well, I don't even think it's like a.
It's not a known language.
Yeah,
it's not a known language, right? And we've seen it in the Ahsoka logo. We've seen it in a bunch of other material as well. I think we've seen it in World Between Worlds and some of the other temples or whatever. But yeah, we can't read it, so it's really frustrating. It's like they're telling you what it is right on the screen, but we don't know what that means.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's clearly labeled where they went, but we have no idea. But I like the idea behind it. Again, I like the music independent, and I like the visual kind of on its own too. It's just that it's Star Wars, and it feels like you could have put this music with Game of Thrones, and it probably would have worked just fine too. And that's what bothered me about it. I like the music though, so I don't have a problem with the music. It just doesn't fit very well, and that's personal preference, and that's all that is. No big deal. But I like that it's at the end though. I don't like the stuff at the beginning because I just want to get to the show. Just get me to the show. I love what they're doing with these shows where you get the the intro, and then you get the the splash screen with the logo, and then the title of the episode, and then you get right back into it, right? I forgot what that's called, but I really love that, and do all the credit stuff at the end, and it gets you to want to watch it at the end of it too. Like when what was it, Secret Invasion that came out on the Marvel series over the summer?
Oh yeah,
that was at the very beginning, and people didn't like it, and then B, you had to skip through it every single time at the beginning of the episode, so it just kind of delayed it. It was inconvenient, and I just like the way they're doing this here. I think it just works so much better. I like the concept art, so I kind of miss the concept art, but also I know you can't keep going back to the well on that. You want these shows to be unique and a little bit different. And this is very unique, and it's very well done, so it's kind of cool to watch it. Mm-hmm. And I still watch it every single time. Like for both episodes, I watched it. And even when I was watching and repeating, I watched it more often than not. So maybe I don't even listen to myself.
Oh, well, no, I was kidding. That was a joke there. But so last question. The title of this episode was Master and Apprentice.
Yeah.
And of course, with like so many other episodes of Star Wars, be it Rebels, Mando, you name it, there's double meanings in this. And of course, this one has the meaning of Master and Apprentice from Ahsoka and Sabine, of course, with Shin and Baylan. But do you feel like they focused enough on the Master and Apprentice relationship? Did they do enough to kind of live up to the title? Does that make sense? Like there was something about it, like it was like, okay, there was a lot here. And I get they were kind of hitting on it here and there, coming back to that, but I don't know if that was really the best title choice.
Well, I mean, they're reestablishing Master and Apprentice, so I think there's probably an argument that, yeah, it still works. I think it works better than Toil and Trouble for episode 2, to be honest with you. Even though I get why that is, but that's a very small, narrow piece of that episode, so I don't know. I don't understand that one. But this one, at least you had different dynamics of it. I think this is really more about Ahsoka and Sabine, though, more so than Baylan and Shin. Like their relationship seems pretty well established, introducing those characters, but again, reintroducing the relationship here and reconciling the Master Apprentice relationship and beginning that journey, as clearly has started now with episode 1.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to end it there. I know it's been a long episode. Ben's chimed in here. Hey, Ben. Lunchtime in Oz. Enjoyed the first 2 episodes. Thanks for being on your lunch, man. But yeah, thanks everybody for coming out. And again, for those of you that are still asleep or fell asleep while watching this, listening to us, or for anybody that missed the beginning of this episode, don't forget we're going to be back tomorrow and to cover the second episode, because this would have been a 4-hour episode and we like sleep. So, but hey, you know what? We had a lot of great people in the chat today. I hope you were keeping up, because there's 8 billion people, but I know you got some shout outs here.
Yeah, I do. Music Train, Jeff, Sky, Jack, Alexandra, Skywalker's Academy, 80s Kid from the 90s, Kathy, Steph, Risk, Ash, Rob, Emotional Evolution, Miss Sunflower, Clayton, Obviously Subdued, Jorge, Bull Run, Dante, and Ben. Thank you all so much for coming out. If I missed anyone, my sincerest apologies, not intentional, of course.
And if you want to join us on Patreon.
Yeah, cantinacast.com/Patreon. A lot of great content. Albert's been teasing it the entire show. A lot of great stuff that we've been doing leading up to Ahsoka as well. The Zevin Chopper episode we just did. A lot of great, we had Alex and Lauren and Dante and folks on from a certain point of view, with the Rebels' favorite moments on that too. So all of that's out there. All starts at just a couple of dollars if you want to do the audio, $5 and up if you want to do the video and join the live streams and get these out there. So again, we'd love to have you join the Patreon, cantinacast.com/Patreon. And if you're listening, cantinacast.com/YouTube. We'd love for you to come out and join the live stream.
Yep. We would certainly appreciate that. Certainly appreciate a like, a subscribe. And don't forget to leave us a review on any of the podcast, iTunes or even Spotify. If you guys are so inclined to do so, we'd appreciate that. And we tend to read those on the air. So you have a vested interest in leaving us a review. If it's 1 star, well, then we're not going to read it. But yeah.
We've read a couple of those in the past too. And
oh, yeah, they're funny. They're always funny.
Yeah, sometimes they're amusing.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you all again for joining us tonight. And we will catch you guys tomorrow for episode 2. And then we'll come back later this weekend, do our way station, and do the Patreon episodes. So, Jonesy, any final words before I hit the credits?
Nope. We'll see you tomorrow night.
All right. See you guys.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.